City News Time, 9 o'clock.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, October 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 3 degrees, 0 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Be prepared. It is going to be the largest single gas price increase ever in the province. That will happen at midnight tonight. Here's our senior business editor, Mike Eppel.
The price for gas is expected to jump 10 cents per liter later tonight. One of the biggest increases in a single day that this province has seen in the last decade, according to GasBuddy.com, following a big jump in oil prices Monday, with OPEC reportedly getting ready to cut production, and refineries seeing a little bit of a scale back in output with the seasonal switch over to wintertime gasoline blends. Southern Ontario gas prices have been nowhere near as high as what they are out west right now. In Metro Vancouver, a North American all-time record was set earlier this week at $2.42 per liter, and it's going up too, with the refinery in Washington State shut down for maintenance. At the City News Business Center, I'm Mike Eppel.
City News Time, 9:01, and now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, it's another cool one for us. You'll need the extra layers, but plenty of sunshine today. You may have some frost, may even have some fog or freezing fog in spots, but that will all dissipate. 19 for the high today, so it will get warmer tonight, mainly clear, down to 5. For today, the high, 19.
And right now, 3 degrees in Ottawa, 0 in Smiths Falls. A candidate for mayor in Ottawa promising to freeze transit fares for 1 year if elected. Mark Sutcliffe says this is step one to deliver reliable service before thinking about raising any fares. He's also pledging to improve transparency around OC Transpo. That would include creating benchmark performance standards, and they would be made public on a monthly basis. Well, fresh off a landslide electoral victory, Premier François Legault in Quebec has a new mission now, that is to form another cabinet. The leader of the re-elected CAQ has many new faces to choose from, with polls reporting the CAQ won 90 ridings of 125 province-wide. The party had 76 when the legislature was dissolved. CAQ won 4 of the 5 seats in the Gatineau area, only the Liberals' André Fortin keeping his seat in the Pontiac. The Liberals did hang on to official opposition status, though. The leader winning her Montreal riding, the party won 21 ridings altogether. Lawyers representing sex workers expected to continue arguments in a Toronto court today. It's part of a constitutional challenge to the federal prostitution laws. Lawyers representing transgender, Indigenous, and Black sex workers expected to argue the laws brought in by the Harper-era Conservatives are too restrictive and they harm marginalized groups. It is day 2 of what's slated to be 4 days of arguments. And a new report from Canadians for Tax Fairness say top companies paid $30 billion fewer in taxes last year than expected under the corporate tax rate. The group tasked with developing the report analyzed financial statements of 123 Canadian corporations worth at least $2 billion apiece. The findings suggest effective or actual tax paid by the companies was about 15% in 2021. That's significantly lower than 26.5% average of the combined federal and provincial tax rate. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, there's so much to get into today. Let's just launch right into it here. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Thanks again for deciding to spend some of your day with us. We're taking a look at the news. We're gathering your views. And coming up, the politics of public education. It is a municipal election year, and as is usually the case, much of the attention is paid to the race for mayor and all the city council races. And that's a big news story. It's a change election, lots of competitive ward races. Going to be a new mayor. But lost in the news cycle is the election of school board trustees and their important positions. One would think that the last 2 years would serve as evidence of that because of all the COVID-related disruption in the school system. And the school system, I mean, it's more or less its own level of government. And there's a lot of money on the line, big budgets to run. The budget for the Ottawa District School Board is more than $1 billion. You know, the budget for the Catholic School Board, the Ottawa Catholic School Board, more than $600 million. And then you have the Francophone school boards, and they have budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And in election years past, it has been my experience that it's been difficult to get people to run for the position of school board trustee. In some election years, many trustees have been acclaimed. That does not appear to be the case this time around. Locally, I was looking through the list of candidates for school board trustee, and there seem to be a lot of people interested in this position now, and the feeling is that may have something to do with the so-called wokeness of public education these days. The culture wars come to public education. So we're going to get into this. You know, what are people getting into when they try to win a school board election? Talk to someone who's been there and done that. Mark Fisher, school board trustee with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, is done with that. He is not running again, but he will join us here momentarily on the Rob Snow Show. And then we'll be joined after the 9:30 news by the professor, Ian Lee, from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, back with another weekly appearance with a hot take on the big news stories. One of the things we're going to talk about is this term. It's kind of a blast from the past. Trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics. It's this idea that if the government gives a tax break to wealthy people, they will invest that money. They'll spend that money, or they'll invest it in a business. They'll expand a business, or they might open a new business because they're rich, and that can only be good for the economy, and the benefits will trickle down to the rest of us. It's it's been called Reaganomics after the late American president Ronald Reagan. Reaganomics, trickle down economics. In the news again so many decades later because of what's been happening in the UK over the last couple of weeks, where there is a new prime minister, Conservative Prime Minister Liz Truss, replaced Boris Johnson. Liz Truss has a new finance minister known as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And they were accused of buying into or adopting trickle-down economics because their plan was to give a big tax break to the wealthy by eliminating the country's top tax bracket in a bid to try and stimulate growth in the UK economy at a time when the UK economy is already suffering from double-digit inflation. What it led to is a credibility crisis, and they had to do a total reversal this week because the currency crashed. The pound crashed. That sent interest rates spiking, and it all happened so fast, some pension plans in the UK could have gone broke had it not been for the intervention of that country's central bank, the Bank of England. It's all very scary stuff. So we're going to ask the professor for his opinion on tax breaks for wealthy people, otherwise known as trickle-down. Trickle-down economics. Does a rising tide really lift all boats? That's coming up after the 9:30 news. Also on the show this morning, my friend on the right side of things, Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Prime Minister Harper. We will revisit the Quebec election. No great surprises last night with Premier Legault winning re-election with an even bigger majority government than he had last time. He really has a stranglehold on the politics of Quebec. But we're going to come at our discussion with a focus on first past the post and electoral reform. There are calls for another look at the way we elect MPs, MPPs, MLAs, MNAs across this country, given what happened in Quebec last night. For example, the Liberal Party of Quebec actually finished third in the popular vote with a little more than 14% of the vote, and nevertheless will form the official opposition. Meantime, the Quebec Conservative Party did manage to capture 13% of the vote and won 0 seats. So this argument is back with a vengeance. It's not fair. First past the post is not fair, and there must be a better way, proportional representation. We'll talk about that. We'll also discuss what's happening in Alberta politics, where the day after tomorrow, someone will win the leadership of the deeply unpopular United Conservative Party. That person will replace Jason Kenney and become the new Premier of Alberta. Michael Taube has been following that race very closely, knows a lot of the characters involved, and on this show has spoken quite highly of Danielle Smith, who is already talking like she's going to run away with this thing and will be the next Premier of Alberta the day after tomorrow. Also on the local beat this morning, housing will be in focus for us with a particular emphasis on this designation, R1. R1 zoning. As I anticipated, becoming a major election issue with just a few weeks remaining in the election campaign. Bob Chiarelli, candidate for mayor, in his housing platform released yesterday, is promising to defend the R1 zoning designation. Frontrunner Catherine McKenney thinks it should be eliminated. R1 zoning basically says only one dwelling can be put on one city lot if it's designated R1. McKenney argues we need more density. And so what is R1 now should be eliminated so that where a single-family home is now, it could be torn down and potentially replaced by a duplex or a triplex, depending on the zoning. Builders like that idea because they can build and sell more units on the same lot. This is something, it already plays out on a daily basis all across Ottawa. Maybe an older compo home is torn down. It's replaced by a duplex or a triplex. It's something that economist Mike Moffat has been looking at. He is with the Smart Prosperity Institute, policy think tank based out of the University of Ottawa. And he's been crunching the numbers about R1 zoning, getting rid of it. What would it mean for Ottawa's housing affordability crisis? So that's a busy show. And then in between all of that, there's you and the Talkback Hour. Between 10 and 11 o'clock at 750-1310. This morning, with your help, I hope we can talk about wages and wage increases, like minimum wages or the salary demands of unions. Two stories that are in the news this week. The minimum wage in Ontario has just gone up to $15.50 an hour. For most minimum wage workers, $15.50 an hour. I remember, because it wasn't that long ago, when $15 an hour was the magic number for the minimum wage. The fight for 15. It was a North America-wide phenomena. The fight for 15. The fight for 15. McDonald's workers go on strike, demanding $15 an hour. Remember? Elections. Fought, won, lost over the minimum wage in Ontario and the fight for 15. The Wynne government bumped it up from a little more than $11 an hour to $14 an hour, and there was lots of debate about whether it was going up too fast for small businesses to adjust. The Doug Ford government was swept into power. It tapped the brakes, but now it is $15.50 an hour. And the same people who led the fight for 15 in Ontario say, it's not enough, it should be 20. I love it. What's a fair minimum wage in 2022 in Ontario? And CUPE education workers, there are some 55,000. They're not teachers. They do all the other jobs. They have voted 96% in favor of strike action. Doesn't mean there's going to be a strike, but that union wants a raise for its members of 11.7% a year. A year. The government has countered with offers of raises of between 1.25% a year and 2% a year. In other words, the two sides remain far apart. I want to know if these workers do go on strike because they want a raise of 11.7% a year, will they have your support when they are on the picket line? Two hot issues, both in the news. I want your views on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Raven Reads. Unbox Indigenous voices. Subscribe today at ravenreads.org.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Behold Emily Carr, painter, about to encounter the force that will consume her life.
How tightly they sealed their secrets from me, humble and pleading before the great trees, awaiting the invitation from the Spirit to come meet me halfway. Nothing is still now, everything is alive. At last, I knew I must see through the eye of the totem itself, the mythic eye of the forest.
Seldom able to live by her brush, before she died in 1945, Emily Carr was in the first rank of Canadian painters.
This is my country. What I want to express is here, and I love it. Amen.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So you want to be a school board trustee? What's that like? Let's ask Mark Fisher. He's a school board trustee, Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to be with you.
Well, it's great to hear from you again, Mr. Fisher. Why did you want to become a school board trustee?
Well, obviously I was entering an incredibly important time in my life. I was married, kids on the way, and, obviously, before at the same time, I had a sort of a track record of working in government and, around public policy issues and public service. So those two things combined really drove me to want to serve my community in a different way. And so the school boards presented that opportunity.
Okay. What's the job like? What's involved with it? A school board trustee, Ottawa Carleton District School Board.
Well, it's incredibly important, Rob, and I think a lot of listeners and voters in Ottawa probably don't know this, but the school board, the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, has a budget well over $1 billion, in terms of its, administration and capital. So it's a significant budget that needs to be managed. We are an employer for over 10,000 employees. That makes us one of the largest employers in Ottawa. We manage, close to 150 schools. So we're one of the largest owners and operators of square footage and facilities in the city. And so as a school board trustee, you're tasked with setting a strategic direction for the school board, passing a significant budget every year, with the goal of advancing student achievement and student well-being. You're also making decisions around how do you provide good places to learn in our older communities and our older schools, but also how do you build schools in our faster, our communities that are growing at an exceptional rate, like Findlay Creek and Riverside South. And doing all of that, recognizing that all the funding is coming from the province, more or less, with some other funds coming in from, different sources. So it's an incredibly important job.
Okay. How much personal time would you estimate you devoted to being a school board trustee?
Well, I think between all the meetings that we have, which are more or less weekly, and start anywhere between 6 and 6:30, and often go to 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. You're doing all the advanced reading to prepare for those meetings, to understand the issues. Obviously, that takes a couple hours, and obviously you're participating in the meeting itself, which tend to go long. But outside of those meetings, you could be engaging with constituents and parents who are having challenges with a particular school and helping them navigate the system. And so you're serving as a community voice in addition to those board meetings. And then, while we haven't done this over the course of the pandemic, just because of constraints on staff, but we're also doing, large strategic reviews. For example, doing accommodation reviews of our high schools or our elementary schools. And if you want to fully participate in those reviews, particularly if those reviews are happening in your zone, that can take up more time throughout the week. So it's definitely more than a part-time job, depending on what's happening from month to month, year to year.
More than a part-time job.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. What's it pay?
It's gone up slightly over the last couple of years, but for a trustee, just a regular trustee on the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, it's roughly $16,000 a year.
Okay.
And then you get a modest bump to be the vice chair and even sort of a minor increase above that for serving as the chair. So it's not a significant amount of money, and nobody should be signing up for this job to for the money.
There seems to be more interest in becoming a school board trustee in this municipal election compared to some recent municipal elections that I have covered, where many trustees were acclaimed. Why do you think that is? What's happening?
I think it's the pandemic. I think it's fair to say over the course of the last 2 years, all levels of government, including school boards, have had to make some, tough decisions about how to manage the pandemic. And, that includes school boards, both for our, again, 10,000 plus employees, but our 70,000 plus students. And, obviously for us, we have the ability and the authority to make, decisions, but obviously in the pandemic, we're taking guidance from our health professionals, whether it's Ottawa Public Health or Public Health Ontario or the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario. And, no matter what decision you make, some people are going to be happy and some people are going to be unhappy. And I think, because of those decisions over the last couple of years, and I think where people are in either agreeing or disagreeing with those decisions is certainly driving more people to participate.
Okay. What if I said it seems as though the so-called woke agenda in public education may be a factor in many people running for school board trustee. What would you say to gender issues, these kinds of things, Mr. Fisher?
Well, I think it's, you'd have to define that for me, right? And, these sound great on bumper stickers, but in reality, talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a school board, in a school system that, for generations has left a lot of students behind, particularly Black students, particularly Indigenous students. So I don't see talking about ways of making sure that we have a representative employee base, that we are, reaching those students who sometimes are falling further behind, to make sure that they're fully engaged and meeting their full potential, and obviously that their well-being is being taken care of. If people see that as woke, they're going to see it the way that they see it. I think it's what an institution like ours needs to be doing to make sure that all students can succeed when they arrive at the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. In terms of the gender issues, obviously people are going to come at it, from very different perspectives. I think from my perspective, we live in an open society, a free society, and I think from an LGBTQ plus 2S perspective, these are issues that we need to understand. We need to be, we need to talk about them. As part of what an open society and an inclusive society looks like, and we need to do our level best to make sure all of our students feel welcome and that they have a place where they feel safe and a place where they want to learn and succeed. And so, again, if people are going to see that as a woke agenda, they're going to see it the way that they see it. I think it's just the right thing to do for a learning organization like the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board.
Okay. How much autonomy do you feel you had as a school board or as a trustee with the school board versus the power of the government at Queen's Park?
I think it's getting worse. I think it's getting worse, Rob, over my time. I think we've seen during the pandemic, and obviously pandemics are unique circumstances, but I think by and large over my 13 years, I have seen the province try to dictate and control the operation of the education system, the operation of school boards, for their own priorities and purposes. And don't get me wrong. I think a certain level of that makes sense. Collective bargaining across the province, making sure that we're on an equal footing. At the end of the day, it's taxpayers' dollars. There's a certain amount of organization from the center or from the province that absolutely has to happen. But I just find, or have found over the last 13 years, but our mandate and our authorities and our abilities to do what we've been legislated to do has been chipped away at, for sure.
Interesting. 13 years. Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed every minute of it.
You did.
The last
Good.
2 years were tough. I definitely seen the conversation change. It's gotten a lot more angry and visceral, but I think that's true for every level of government.
Okay.
But I've loved every minute of it.
Well, look, thank you for serving as a trustee for all of those years. Tremendous sacrifice, Mr. Fisher.
Thanks, Rob. I
Thanks
appreciate
for your
it.
time.
And make sure you take a look at trustees are on the ballot. They're incredibly important, and we need to make smart decisions about who's sitting around the table.
Okay. Mark Fisher, Ottawa-Carleton District School Board trustee for a little while longer. Coming up after the news, it's the professor, Ian Lee, on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
I think our schools need better resources. Teachers need to be paid better. I think that there should be programs for Black people that prioritize our needs, and I think the curriculum needs to be adjusted to reflect all peoples, not just one kind of person. And they should also invest a lot of money in programs, after-school programs that are not like relevant in 1990, but that are relevant today.
$20. And Maggie, Mrs. Calabash, come into my kitchen. A quick mayonnaise, egg yolks, garlic, Dijon mustard, lemon juice, olive oil, immersion blender. Go down, come up. Voila, mayonnaise. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. Yeah.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, October 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 7 degrees, Smiths Falls 6, and here's what's making news this hour. It's a hit to the wallet that's coming at the gas pump tonight. Not a minor increase in the price per litre, but 10 cents at midnight. Production decreases were announced to drive up the price of oil. The price at the pump follows immediately. And while we will be paying in the high $1.60 range a litre by this time tomorrow, think of those in Vancouver who will be over $2.50. That's mainly due to a shortage after refinery problems in Washington state. Multiple 911 calls just before 5 this morning. Couple of balconies on a 3-story residential building on Everest Private on fire. The crews arrived and put that out before it spread to the interior. That's around the Saint Laurent and Russell Road area. Candidates for school board trustee, councillor, and mayor have under 3 weeks now to get their message out before voting day. There have already been thousands of people who have voted in the special advance poll in Ottawa, and 2 other advance polls will be held, one this coming Friday, one the Friday following. The actual voting day is October 24th. OPP says a couple of recent cases of vandalism in Perth. Now, they say these don't seem to be related to incidents from earlier this summer in the town. The force is also asking anyone who sees an incident of mischief to report that so police can document it before the area is cleaned of things like graffiti. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The professor is back. Associate Professor of Management at the Sprott School of Business at the Panda Game losing Carleton University. How many is that in a row? 4 games, 5 in a row?
Yeah, I don't think we're doing too well. We excel at basketball, though. Let's not forget that.
Basketball.
We dominate the basketball championships, and across Canada, we've won, I don't know how many times, like 10 or 12 or 14 times in the last similar number of years.
It's a dynasty.
We're really good at it.
Yeah. The Ottawa U students, not to make light of what people in Sandy Hill are going through, seem to be much more wild party people. Carleton used to have the reputation of being the party school.
No, we're a much more serious university, I guess. You could interpret that data.
Maybe.
You could say, we've got more...
well, you don't tip over cars
and on studying, and acquiring skills and learning and all that good stuff. They're the party school. We're the serious school. How's that? University.
Did you see the sign that was hung up outside of one of the houses in Sandy Hill? What does a Carleton grad call an Ottawa U grad? Boss.
Yeah, that's his student humor. It's good.
It's pretty good, though. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. To the discussion on the hot topics of the day. I want to kind of talk about what's been happening in the UK, and if we can, kind of bring it back home to Canada. I would direct people, Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and I guess they call it the governor of the Bank of England. Anyway, call him today in the Globe and Mail, right? It's just been chaos in the United Kingdom where they're having a terrible cost of living crisis. Electricity prices are out of control. The Queen is dead. Boris is gone. There's a new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, new finance minister, and they have a bold plan. They're going to cut taxes for the wealthy by eliminating the top tax rate of 45%. All done with borrowed money. As I said, they have double-digit inflation. So the reaction in financial markets, immediate. Pound, craters. Interest rates on their long bonds, known as gilts, go way up. So much so that the Bank of England had to intervene to keep pension plans solvent. And many of the critics accused the British Prime Minister of attempting to do trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics. And the claim is, from the critics, trickle-down economics doesn't work. That a rising tide does not lift all boats. What is your opinion on the effectiveness of trickle-down economics?
Well, if we sort of pretend that the high-income countries of the world, the wealthiest countries of the world, the Canadas, the United States, the France, the Germany, which use policies of develop and implement policies of economic growth, if we pretend they don't exist, then trickle-down doesn't work. They're quite right. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. The trickle-down is just an ideological pejorative term applied to policies by liberals and progressives that they don't like.
Okay.
I'm not going to defend what Truss was doing. I think she handled it not well. They didn't communicate it well. They were trying to do too much too quickly. Some people say, how outrageous, cutting the tax at 45% on high-income earners. May I remind...
That's people making $145,000. It was people making...
All pompous Canadians, please take note.
Okay.
The maximum tax rate on the highest incomes in Canada is 33%. And by the way, it is lower in the United States. Is anybody suggesting that Canada and United States are somehow the new Somalia, the basket case of the world? I don't think so.
Right.
I just don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that this was the right time. I'm not defending what she did. I'm trying to say, everybody step back, look at the big picture, look at it in a larger context.
Okay.
That leads to my next point that's really, really important.
Okay.
And I understood and I agreed with some of the things that Mark Carney said in the op-ed, but the economic stuff, you shouldn't be having fiscal policy going one way and monetary policy going another. I mean, that's just classic straight out of 101 economics textbooks and public policy textbooks. But I was disappointed in his op-ed for his, I would say, abject denial of one of the most famous tensions and issues that lie in public policy and public economics and has for 50, 80 years. And it was articulated by that great famous Harvard liberal economist, Arthur Okun, who was the chief advisor to, oh my goodness, President John F. Kennedy. Not exactly a right-wing conservative. And he wrote a famous book, still in print, anybody can Google it, Equity versus Efficiency. And what he argued, I'll just say very straightforwardly, all public policy decisions, he argued, every public policy decision involves a trade-off between the two. If you adopt a policy that encourages more efficiency, which is a shorthand code term for growth, jobs, that sort of thing, you necessarily are going to produce a little bit less equality. In other words, you emphasize more equality in the policy, you're going to have a little bit less of efficiency. So we trade off. We know that. That's why we don't have 100% capital gains taxes, which would be 100% equitable, but would be terrible in terms of economic efficiency. And likewise, we don't have zero capital gains taxes. So likewise, we don't have 100% tax on incomes, but we don't have a tax-free world where there's no income tax. All of our policies have evolved over long periods of time as trade-offs between the two, equity versus efficiency. Equity encourages growth. You want more investment in the country. You want more pipelines. You want more oil and gas development. You want more economic growth. You want more jobs. Efficiency focuses on the inequality between the top and the bottom. And since the Depression until Justin Trudeau, Everybody understood. Liberal governments, conservative governments, Republican governments, Democratic governments understood about this trade-off. In this debate, we debated where exactly does the trade-off land. What's happened since Mr. Trudeau got in, and this is my overarching criticism. Some people think it's personal. Actually, I think he's a nice guy as a human being. I just think he's not qualified and doesn't understand the issues. This is a substantive argument I have. And his principal thing is he's said, oh no, all policies, every last policy must be looked at exclusively through the lens of equality. And I just think that it's going to lead to long-term very negative consequences, because it's going to encourage, if nothing else, capital flight. Capital flight is the term when domestic capital, the money of the rich people and the companies, leaves the country to go to somewhere else because they found places where they can get a better return.
Right.
And we have capital leaving Canada. The Bank of Canada has documented this, so has StatsCan. So is Professor Jack Mintz at the University of Calgary. So we have, and that's because we have created more and more policies that focus exclusively on the equity side. And I would include in that equity argument the argument that we must decarbonize like tomorrow morning, regardless of the consequences. So what if we cause enormous deprivation? Too bad. You know, we got to save the world. And that's part of that equity argument. Instead of saying, look, people, there's a balance. You got to balance it and trade it off. And Mr. Carney did not. I was very disappointed in that. I mean, part of his speech was classical, good, solid, excellent economics. He's a very smart guy. But part of it embedded in what seemed like a neutral economic analysis, there was ideology in there. Right. And when he started talking about trickle-down, well, trickle-down is a very loaded phrase. Trickle-down is just the pejorative term that progressives use to describe pro-growth policies.
Okay. But I think politically it's more fashionable to want to tax rich people more than,
it is,
say,
and that's why
cut their
there's
tax.
a trade-off.
Right.
You can go to 100% taxation. The Soviet Union did it. And people say, oh, don't use extremes. First off, it's not an extreme. The Soviet Union did exist. It existed for 71 years. And it governed an awful lot of people. So let's not, just because we don't agree with it and we thought it was too extreme, let's not say, well, it doesn't really count. Okay. I'm just putting that out as an example of the extreme case on one side. You can go from complete confiscation, as they did, no private property, and the state owns everything. You can go right over to the other extreme where you get some kind of a hard right government that doesn't tax well at all, or taxes it very little. And so we don't do that either. The Western countries, the OECD countries, Europe, Canada, U.S., have gone for the so-called hybrid model. And so we want private property, we want private growth, we want private investment. We accept that most jobs and most wealth is created in the private sector. This view, I call it the blue liberal view, if you will. I call it the recognition that the government is the policeman or the referee of the hockey game.
Yeah.
Their job is to referee. They're the people wearing the pinstripe suits in the NFL. They call the penalties when someone is cheating. But it's not the role of the referee to play on one of the football teams. Sure. That's why governments privatized commercial activities like Air Canada over the years and like CN Railroad, because that's not their job. And they do a terrible job at it, by the way, in the studies I've read over a long lifetime in academia. And that isn't to say that government's incompetent. Government has very strong competencies in collecting data and identifying social problems or economic problems, and then addressing them with regulation as the referee of the hockey game. And as long as you have that balance as the referee between not trying to shut the game down completely and versus the other extreme of just letting all penalties go uncalled, you want to strike that balance down the middle. I don't believe we struck that balance any longer in Canada, and I don't believe Mr. Carney acknowledged that in his op-ed.
Okay. 9:44, we're here with the professor. We'll stop here a little bit early. It'll give us more time on the other side to talk about a couple of other things. Yeah. Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University, on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa, we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
There we go.
Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Back with Professor Ian Lee, Spot School at Carleton. How is it that you have a country like Norway, oil rich, and it has a sovereign wealth fund with $1.5 trillion in it? And then you have Alberta, oil rich, about the same population, and it has a heritage fund with $18 billion in it, which is really next to, I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not $1.5 trillion. What did Norway do compared to what did Alberta do?
It's worse than that because Canada is ranked by the IEA, the International Energy Agency of Paris, which is a UN agency. Contrary to those people who send me emails saying, don't quote me, quite right-wing corporate ownership and propaganda. The UN is not owned by corporations. It's an international body. Sorry, having to explain that to some people, but there you go. The IEA ranks Canada 4th or 5th largest in the world in terms of oil and gas reserves and production. So we're not a trivial player. It's not a question of comparing apples to oranges. If anything, it's the other way around. We're bigger than Norway in every sense of the word, including our reserves. And we should have a bigger sovereign wealth fund from the revenues from that. And the difference is public policy. The Norwegians, a very progressive country in those Scandinavian countries, decided to extract their oil and gas reserves and then bank it and put it into this sovereign wealth fund, including which was going to be used for many things, including the decarbonization of the economy. They can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. We've gone down a very different road in Canada where we said, no, it's just bad, it's evil, natural gas and oil is bad, and we got to get rid of it as fast as we possibly can. We're going down the road that the Germans went down. And I want to remind remind everybody yet again. Germany is sourcing about 22% of the totality of its energy from coal. Canada's about 5%, principally Alberta and Nova Scotia. Okay, these are percentages, so we're normalizing the statistics to compare apples to apples. Germany is vastly dirtier environmentally. Okay, you will not hear those words from crossing the lips of Mr. Trudeau or Mr. Guilbeault or Mr. Wilkinson. They will not acknowledge that. And they've ended up in that bizarre situation because they decided to shut down nuclear and oil and gas. And so when the crisis hit, as it was inevitably going to hit, because alternatives cannot be ramped up, they haven't developed the alternatives at a sufficient level or quantity to displace all the energy they have demonized, nuclear, oil, and gas. So then they ran into shortages. They ran into serious, profound shortages, exacerbated by Putin's invasion, for sure. But it was only, remember, you can't even argue, well, that's not their fault, it's because of Putin. Putin was selling them oil and gas. He wasn't selling them alternative energy. So this argument that, well, the failures are because of Putin, no, that's a crazy argument, because they got rid of their own oil and gas reserves, or resources, oil, gas, coal, and then they just, okay, we'll get them from Putin. But that's not to decarbonize. It just means you're getting your energy from another source, but it's still fossil fuels. So my point is, they were playing games, if you will, with themselves on public policy. They didn't admit that they were creating the conditions for shortages. The shortages arrived, and guess what? They're using more coal because they're not willing, I guess, to freeze in the dark, to use a colloquial, colorful phrase.
Right.
And we have been historically more responsible and saying we need a balance of energy resources. For sure, invest in alternatives. For sure, invest in carbon capture. But you don't shut down your pipelines, as some people are advocating, some municipal councils are advocating, as the NDP are advocating, as the Greens are advocating. This is madness. We're going to end up in Europe's position. So we've got to develop a much more balanced approach, like the progressive Norwegians have done, a much more responsible and prudent environmental suite of policies than what we have done.
Okay. Let's talk about a local issue here. Are you familiar with this looming battle over R1 zoning? This is how exciting things are in Ottawa. We talk about R1 zoning designations. So R1 means the lot can only have one residence, right? Yeah. Bob Shirelli wants to defend this designation.
Right.
So where you are there on the back skids of the glebe there, if you're zoned R1, it would have to stay R1. McKinney wants R1 done away with.
Yes.
So that when the single-family home is sold or whatever, you could tear it down and build a duplex or a triplex.
Right.
I don't know if they'd ever get away with that.
So right in the middle of your suburb.
I don't know if they'd ever get away. Would they ever even get away with it on Clemo?
That's right.
Would they ever get away with that on Clemo Avenue, do you think? A row of townhomes on Clemo Avenue?
Probably not, but let me go bigger picture again to situate this in a larger context.
All right, okay.
This is the latest policy scam from progressives. I want to explain that.
All right.
As you know, Rob, for at least 4 or 5 years, long before anybody else was.
Long before
anyone, to my knowledge, I didn't see an op-ed making this argument. Okay. I've been arguing that the major cities, the big city mayors and the big city councils and the planning units in these big city bureaucracies have been deliberately creating socially engineered shortages of housing on the pretext that the burbs are bad, that they're causing, they're the principal driver of our global warming, and it is urban sprawl, they call it, which is their pejorative term for population growth. Every city I have ever visited in my life on this planet, and I've been to London and Paris and Moscow and Kiev and Buenos Aires and Shanghai and so forth. They started out 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 300 years ago, like in Ottawa, or 200 years ago, and they start in a very small area, the downtown, the original downtown, the old town as it's called in Europe, and then you go around that and you keep growing around that and you expand ever outward. It's called population growth. Progressives have denied that that's the way to grow. So they have made this argument and many people have bought it, including, unfortunately, the Globe and Mail op-ed this morning when they did argue we got to build more houses. But then they bought into the scam, and it is a scam, that we can produce all of our growth in new housing in the urban core. So people say, okay, this is all very abstract. Let's talk about Ottawa. We have 1 million people. The official plan says we're going to 1.5 million by 2050. That's only 30 years away. I accept that demographic forecast. It's from StatsCan. Perfectly legit. Sounds good. They believe, including Councillor McKenney, the mayoral candidate, that we can build most or all or at least the large lion's share of the housing needed. I don't care, low-rise, high-rise, sideways, doesn't matter. We can build them in the urban core. That's enough housing for 500,000 people in 30 years can be built.
Well, if not everybody's living in a single-family home, maybe you can.
Does anybody believe that there is enough space or will to say we're going to put 500,000 people into Alta Vista or the Glebe or Old Ottawa South or Westboro or down Vanier?
If there used to be one family, there's 4 families.
Listen,
or
Rob,
6
let's
families.
Be serious. Okay, we're talking putting almost all of the they, not me. They, when they're talking about getting R1, that's code word for saying let's put all of the growth through densification in a very small area of the city, which is the most dense part of the city already. Okay, and what I'm saying is this is a scam. It is an empirical scam because when you look at every city, certainly in Europe, North America, and I would say China, you build in concentric circles around the core. Once upon a time, the Glebe was the first suburb of Ottawa because the urban downtown of Ottawa was the market. That was the totality of Ottawa, was the market, if you go back to 1850 or 1860. And my point is that as cities expand, you add around the edges. We typically call them the burbs. And so what I'm saying, I'm not against densification. I'm against this nonsense that we can achieve and build enough houses to solve the desperate housing shortage caused by these same progressives. Now they're saying they lost that battle. They argued, and believe me, I know I've got op-eds where they argued for the first 3 years when I started making this criticism. They said, no, there's no housing shortage whatsoever. Figment of your imagination. It's just, foreigners coming in and buying up houses, that sort of thing. Then the Scotiabank released a study about a year and a half ago showing 1.8 million, and then CMHC a short time ago said, no, we're over 3 million houses short in Canada. So they changed their tactics. Instead of saying and denying there was a housing shortage, they said, yes, there's a housing shortage, and we've got to build it through densification. This is the what they're doing now. They're arguing we got to do it through getting rid of R1, getting rid of single-family home designations in neighborhoods, and this will apply equally to the burbs, everybody. This will apply to anywhere. Once you get rid of it, that means any neighborhood, any neighborhood,
there would be no R1 designation.
Story high-rise beside you. Okay. And the crazy thing is, they argue, look at, we have to do this. No, we don't. For 2,000 years, that's how cities have grown in Europe, and Paris, and London, and in Canada. We're the second, Rob, we're the second largest country in the world.
We're out of time.
Actually an idiotic op-ed about 6 months ago in the Globe saying we're running out of land in Canada. No, we're not.
Okay.
We're the second largest country in the world.
Yeah, but I bet you the Glebe is full. All right, we got to run. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay. Professor Ian Lee from Carleton. He gets all whipped up at the end. It never fails. The news is coming up, and then we're going to do the Talkback Hour wages, wage increases, minimum wages, 11.7% raises. Talkback Hour, City News.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
I mean, one of the major issues I think that, especially walking around in the market area, is housing. Housing security for those who are not going to be able to benefit from all of the development that we're doing. So what is the city's response? How can we use some of the properties that we do have power to control and satisfy the needs for those who are housing insecure?
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, October 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 7 degrees, 6 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A pair of Hockey Canada representatives will be under fire again from the House of Commons committee during another round of testimony on the sex assault allegation scandal. It comes after yet another twist in this controversy. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
The current and past chairs of Hockey Canada will be facing a barrage of questions as they testify at the Heritage Committee. MPs from across party lines have been expressing their growing anger and frustration with Hockey Canada after the Globe and Mail reported the organization has a second reserve fund earmarked to deal with matters like sexual assault claims. That second fund was not revealed during previous testimony from Hockey Canada officials, despite MPs demanding information and financial statements. The feds have already pulled funding, and Minister for Sport Pascal Saint-Onge is calling for resignations of the executive. She also wants parents and players to demand new leadership.
Because Hockey Canada belongs to its members, first and foremost. So it's also the parents that send registration fees that have a power to change the organization from within.
In August, the Board of Hockey Canada said it fully stands behind the CEO and the executive team. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time 10:02, and now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, it's another cool one for us. You'll need the extra layers, but plenty of sunshine today. You may have some frost, may even have some fog or freezing fog in spots, but that will all dissipate. 19 for the high today, so it will get warmer tonight, mainly clear, down to 5. For today, the high, 19.
And right now, 7 degrees in Ottawa, 6 degrees in Smiths Falls. The NCC is updating the effect of the pre-summer storm that ripped through the capital. The Victoria Day long weekend derecho caused significant damage to the Greenbelt, according to CEO Toby Nussbaum.
The storm significantly affected the Greenbelt, especially the Pine Grove, Southern Farm, and Piney Forest sectors, where we estimate to have lost about 70% of the upper canopy layer, which covers about 2,700 hectares of land.
And Nussbaum says while the trails have reopened to the public again, it is going to take years to make the area look the way it did before the storm. A strain of the Omicron COVID-19 variant emerging as the one likely to dominate this fall and winter. With those details, here's City News reporter Jamie Pulfer.
Experts are concerned this will be fueling a wave in Europe and North America before the end of November. An Omicron subvariant called BQ.1.1 that could become the dominant COVID strain here. There are also concerns immunocompromised people could be more at risk, according to infectious diseases Dr. Isaac Bogart. Bogosh.
That it's likely mutated to some extent where that Evusheld won't provide the same degree of protection.
He's talking about the drug called Evusheld, given to cancer patients and transplant recipients, meant to offer months of protection. Dr. Bogosh says it's not known how effective the new bivalent vaccine will be against this subvariant, but so far vaccines have been protecting us against severe illness. The Public Health Agency of Canada tells City News there have been 12 detections of this subvariant so far, but given limited testing, that number could be higher. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
City News time, 10:04. The Ontario Superior Court hearing today from the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform. Lawyers representing transgender, Indigenous, and Black sex workers expected to argue how the laws that were brought in by the Conservatives years ago disproportionately harm marginalized groups of people in the sex work industry. Advocates say the new laws are more restrictive than when they were replaced and continue to criminalize sex work. The Alliance says there shouldn't be any criminal law specific to sex work and has dozens of recommendations to create a more regulated industry. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Minimum wages and 11.7% raises. The Ontario minimum wage is now $15.50 an hour for most minimum wage workers, $15.50 an hour. Is that fair, or should it be higher? Say $20 an hour. What do you think? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. As well, CUPE education workers have voted 96% in favor of strike action. Doesn't mean there's going to be a strike, but 96% in favor of strike action. The union is asking for an 11.7% wage increase a year. 11.7% wage increase a year. So if these workers end up going on strike, education workers, not teachers, support staff, if these workers end up going on strike because that's the raise they want, but they can't come to an agreement with the government, would they have your support? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Wages and wage increases. A couple of stories that they're in the news mix. Wages and wage increases. So this is why I wanted to ask you today about these developments. First, we have this this Ontario minimum wage. Went up in Ontario. $15.50 an hour for most minimum wage workers. $15.50 an hour. Should it be higher? Or is that fair? $15.50 an hour for the minimum wage. I mean, what kind of minimum wage do you need to earn to, say, get by in Ottawa? If you're working for the minimum wage and you're not a student, working, part-time for spending money while you live at home with your parents. $15.50? $15.50? Too much? More? A lot more? Like 20? Yeah, I remember when $15 an hour, even that was like the perfect number for a minimum wage. A fight for 15. Well, it's $15.50 now. It's $15.50 now. Does that mean people have waved the white flag? Don't kid yourself. Not so. Now it's in the news. $15.50 an hour for a minimum wage is not enough of a minimum wage anymore. And it should be 20. So what do you think about that? $20 an hour as a minimum wage. 750-1310. So that's one story that's in the mix, the minimum wage. The other is 11.7. This 11.7% number. That is the annual raise being demanded by CUPE as it negotiates with the Ontario government on behalf of 55,000 members working in the public education system. They're not teachers. They do all the other jobs in the education system. The union demanding a raise 11.7% a year. A year. 11.7%. So I'm just trying to picture this. You know, the schools that are around the corner here from this radio station. If it comes to the point where these workers do go on strike, and if they do hit the picket line, and they're out there on strike on Conroy Road here, picketing in front of a school. I'm not even saying that's close to happening, but let's say it happens. Would they have your support when you see them out there on the picket line? You know, would you honk the horn? Beep, 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 beep. You go. You know, you go. Fight the man. Fight the man. Fight for that 11.7% raise. Would they have your support? Because it's been 2 years of pandemic-related disruptions in public education. And the year before the pandemic wasn't that great either. So minimum wages and 11.7% raises is what I want to talk about for the hour, but only if you call me, 750-1310. Kathy in Kempville. Morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for calling.
So, yeah, the two issues. First of all, the QP one. So I'm in the high-tech world, and we do raises based on performance. So I know it's a completely different system.
Right.
However, 11.7, you can't even take them seriously. In
Really?
my mind,
Okay.
you can't support that in any way. If they wanted to say, we want 5, even 6%, you could say, okay, you know, maybe because of inflation and things like that. But 11.7 per year is just ridiculous.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I can't do that in any way.
Okay, so if they were out on strike in Kempville,
yep,
not much support from you then.
No support.
No support. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not when they're being ridiculous.
Not when they're being ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah, if they wanted to propose something that was more reasonable, like I said, 5-6%, which is still high, then you could probably get behind some of that.
Okay. $15.50 is the minimum wage in Ontario now, Kat. Yeah.
So I don't have enough data to even begin to say what I think the minimum wage should be.
Okay.
But I think that sometimes people confuse minimum wage with living wage.
Right.
And to me, the minimum wage is based on what could a person do or not do. In my mind, a person who's making minimum wage probably can't afford to own a home. They will need to rent.
When I was working for the minimum wage, it was never my intent to buy a home while I was working for the minimum wage, you know.
No, exactly.
Right,
but also perhaps people on minimum wage cannot afford a car. They should be on perhaps a bus pass. Perhaps they'll have to have a roommate or another person, perhaps a spouse or something like that. Because people always look at the housing cost, for example, and say, a person on minimum wage can't afford this. No, not on their own, quite possibly they cannot. They need to have a roommate or something of that nature. Minimum wage isn't meant, in my mind, for you to be able to do all the things you would like to do in the manner you would like to do them. Right? It means that you can get by if you make some sacrifices and live perhaps differently than those others that are not on minimum wage.
Gotcha, Kathy.
Perhaps
Great
you can't
points.
go on a cruise for your vacation.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can't afford a vacation at all.
Maybe. Yeah. All right, Kathy. Good points. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
for the
you.
call.
Bye.
Yep. Minimum wages, 11.7% raises. The Ontario minimum wage, $15.50 an hour. Fair? Should it be higher? Ontario Federation of Labor says it's too low. Still, $15.50 an hour should be $20 an hour. What do you think of that? QP education workers, 96% in favor of a strike vote. 55,000 members. They had a strike vote over the last few weeks. 96% in favor of a strike. The salary demand is an 11.7% raise a year. So I want to know if they go on strike. I'm not saying they're going on strike, but if they go on strike, would they have your support with that kind of wage demand? Solidarity with the QP education workers. Bill in Canada, you're on City News. Bill. Hi, Bill.
Good morning.
Or Kevin, it says here. Is it Kevin or Bill? Who is it? Bill?
Bill, that's Bill.
All right, Bill, sorry.
Okay, am I on now?
You're on, Bill. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about increases. We're in our mid-80s.
Okay, yeah.
And we were looking for a house cleaner.
A house cleaner, okay.
And we phoned an agency yesterday. My wife phoned yesterday.
Yep.
And they're charging $32 an hour. Now.
$32 an hour to clean
now.
out. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Next month, they're going to $46 an hour.
Wow.
And so how you talk about it? They say all the seniors have lots of money.
Right.
How in the hell are we going to keep that money with the wages going up like that and needing help?
Now, the person that comes to clean your house, Bill, are they really getting the full $36 an hour, or how much of that is going to
I don't really know. It's an agency.
Right.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
But somebody's making a lot of money when it's going to go up to $46 an hour.
My goodness.
I know when I was working. I haven't worked for 30 years, but I wasn't making that much an hour.
No, I don't imagine. Yeah, that's pretty good money if you can get it, I guess, right?
Yeah, I know, and you can't. The trouble is you can't get anybody.
So let me ask you this. Bill in Canada.
It dropped in my eyes.
The QP education workers won 11.7% raises a year.
Right.
Yeah. If they went on strike, would they have your support with that kind of wage demand?
No, I wouldn't give support to anybody going on strike.
No. Okay. All right. End of story. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Yeah. Let's take one more here. Pete in Ottawa. Pete.
Hi there, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Pete. Yeah.
Listen, I don't know. When I was a kid, okay, minimum wage was when you were starting out. Okay?
Yeah, starting out, sure.
I don't think minimum wage is to keep someone living. I had 3 jobs when I was a kid. Really? Well, I'm not even a kid.
Yeah, okay.
So, it's like, where do we get this idea that it's supposed to be a living wage,
Well, the argument would go the economy's changed a lot, and the idea that you would go to high school, maybe a couple of years of college or university, come out, you work for the government or work for whatever, some kind of company for 30 years and retire with a pension. Those days are over.
Yeah.
Now we're in the world of precarious work. We're in the world of multiple jobs, not a lot of job security. Pensions are pretty much out of the question. So more focus is paid attention to the minimum wage now, I think, Pete.
I guess,
right?
But I
okay.
disagree with it anyway.
But what do you think? $15.50 an hour? Some people say it's still not enough. It's still not enough.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're working at McDonald's or if you're, just doing labor, I mean, I think it's enough.
Okay. On the 11% wage increase, that's the demand from CUPE for its education workers. Okay. And they say, if we don't get it, we might go on strike. 96% strike vote. If they went on strike asking for an 11.7% raise, would they have your support?
Well, first of all, I'm retired and I drive a school bus.
Right.
So I see them a lot of them all the time.
Yeah.
You do a good job.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't have any support. They're using the kids as a leverage.
Oh, they are. Okay, Pete. All right. Thank you. Interesting point. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye. Yep.
Bye.
Yep. Because some of those QB workers are school bus drivers. 1017. Minimum wages and 11.7% raises on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
My name is Chase Nicholas. I am a Mi'kmaq hockey player. Growing up, I always remember my family talking about the Mi'kmaq as the creators of the game of hockey. In grade 7, I did research on Mi'kmaq hockey sticks as the first sticks of the NHL. I found a Mi'kmaq hockey stick made in 1917, the same year the NHL was formed. I was surprised to find out the very stick I was holding was made by my great-great-grandfather, Alexander Cope. In 1934, an elder known as Old Joe Cope wrote a letter to the Halifax Herald claiming the Mi'kmaq created hockey. I found out later that I am a direct descendant of Old Joe Cope. There was a time when Mi'kmaq children were torn from their families and not allowed to speak their language, losing their words and stories. But the stories are coming back to us. Stepping on the ice, I take pride knowing the roots of the game of hockey stem from my ancestors in the Mi'kmaq Nation.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Minimum wages and 11% raises. The minimum wage here in the province of Ontario is $15.50 an hour. Is it fair? Some think it should be higher, like $20 an hour. I'd like to know what you think. CUPE education workers. 50,000 CUPE education workers have voted 96% in favor of strike action. Doesn't mean there's going to be a strike, but nevertheless, that's the result of strike votes. That union wants 11.7% wage increases every year for its members. If these workers go on strike, will they have your support? Those are the questions for the Talkback Hour. Kevin on the Quebec side. Kevin, you're on City News. Hi there.
Yeah, I'm moving over there this month, though. So I say 8% settled at CUPE is a good way.
8%,
and then
okay.
base it on inflation for the subsequent years.
Okay.
And then minimum wage definitely.
Okay,
for
but that's
20.
not the question, though.
Oh, go ahead.
The question isn't, is it fair? If they go on strike, would you support them if they want 11.5%, 11.7%?
Yes, I'll support them, and then I say offer 8% to settle. Yes, I support them.
You would support them. Okay,
of course,
all right.
Yeah, the kids. It's not holding kids for ransom. These people are an important part of society. And then for minimum wage, yes to 20. But I really want to hear talk
yes
of
to 20. My gosh.
But let's talk about maximum wage. How much is enough? We need a maximum wage. We need a wealth tax.
Need a wealth tax? Okay.
Absolutely. This luxury tax is a good first step, but it doesn't include jewelry and artwork and these things. And we need to work with all the countries of the world.
You know, if you're a high-income person.
Pardon?
If you're a high-income person, and it doesn't take much to be a high-income person.
Okay, high as in what?
If you're making north of, say, $200,000 a year.
Okay.
In Ontario, the government's taking half your money.
Yeah, that's too much. But when
too
you
much. But you just said it's not enough. We should have wealth taxes, and we should tax assets.
Wealth tax on the multimillionaires and billionaires.
All right.
Not $200,000 a year. That's nothing.
Okay.
But how much is enough? We need to make billionaires extinct.
How many yachts can you water ski behind, Gordon? That's what you're thinking, right? From Wall Street. Okay. Gotcha. That's. Bud Fox from Wall Street. How many yachts can you water ski behind, Gordon? Fred, it says, are you in the West End, Fred?
Westport area, Rob.
Westward. I don't know where that is, but nevertheless.
You don't know where Westport is? Okay. Well, it's in the Rideau Lakes area.
Oh, Rideau Lakes area. Okay. All right.
So my thing is, and I don't know, as I understand it, this includes all the cleaners and everybody else. My wife works in the education part of that.
Yeah.
In the literacy program. Now, and I'm going by what she tells me, in 1997, she was making $19 an hour.
Right.
Now she's making $23 an hour.
Okay.
So that's how much of a raise she's had in that amount of time. What's that, 25 years?
Yep. CUPE says the average. CUPE says the average hourly wage for people that it represents in the education system is almost $28 an hour.
Well, she's not making.
She's not getting that. Okay.
She's not getting that. And here's the other thing that I would bring up.
Right.
In her vocation, what she's doing in Toronto, in that school board in Toronto, one of them, they get $42 an hour. She's making $23 an hour doing the exact same job in the Upper Canada School Board.
Wow.
So it's not all equal across the whole education system.
Doesn't sound like it.
School
Nope.
boards pay differently depending on what school board you're in.
Okay.
So I would say, that's almost like, you're doing the exact same job, but not living in the Toronto area, and the discrepancy of $19 an hour because you live in Toronto doesn't seem quite right to me.
So obviously, if your wife goes on strike, you're going to support her.
Well, of course, I'm not supporting the fact that they want $11 an hour raise for the next.
Well, 11% raises.
Yeah, or
11%. Yeah.
I don't really support that, but I suppose it's like anything. You got to start somewhere.
Got to start somewhere. Okay, fair enough. Okay, minimum wage $15.50 an hour in Ontario now. $15.50 an hour.
I think that's fair. Like a lot of these minimum wages, it's a starting point for people. I notice a lot of young people starting at different jobs, and $15.50 an hour in today's world, it's not a lot of money. But I mean, again, if you're entering the workforce at a kind of a labor job or a summer job, or I think
in the service industry or what have you, right?
Exactly, you have a lot of students starting out at that. And at that wage, I mean, I think it's fair. I really do.
All right. Thank you, Fred.
Okay,
Thank you.
Rob.
I will look up westward on the map, so I'm not so ignorant next time. Don in Bell's Corners. I know where that is. Don.
Hi.
Hi, Don.
Hi. I just wanted to comment on the 11% increase for the education.
11.7%. Yep. If they go on strike wanting that kind of raise, would they have your support?
They maybe not 11, maybe around 8 or so, but
8?
I just it would be good to make clear who educational workers are and what work they do. A lot of times on the news you'll hear, the educational workers, and they think it's the teachers. It's not the teachers.
No, I've made that clear. I said they're not
the most challenged children in the school.
Yeah.
They have the most difficult job in the schools, and they are not paid enough for the job and the work they do.
CUPE says average is about $39,000. That's what CUPE says.
Yeah, and I like for the work they do, day in and day out. They're there from early till everybody leaves. A lot of times after school is finished, and they take care of a lot of challenged kids, and they have a difficult job. And I don't think $39,000 a year is enough for people to do that type of work. They're valuable people in our educational system.
So they say that, they need some money to catch up because they've been whacked by this Bill 124, right? That capped their raises.
Right.
So, again, I come back to this. If they're on the picket line this winter, would you support them?
Yes, I would. If they don't get an increase, I would support them because I think that I'm not familiar with the other members of CUPE. I know there's bus drivers and other workers, custodians, but
it's basically all the people who aren't teachers, as I understand it.
Pardon me?
All the people who aren't teachers.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Yeah. The thing is, if the support staff get 11.7%, what do you think the teachers are going to want?
What are the teachers or the educational workers, assistants?
Yeah. But if the support staff gets 11.7%, what will the teachers want? They need contracts too, Don.
Well, I thought your topic was concerning educational assistants and support staff, not teachers.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go out to where you're going to talk about teachers.
Yeah. I know. My point is, the government wants to get a template down here. They want an agreement with CUPE that can set the tone, because they need to come up with deals with teachers.
Yeah,
and
now we're heading off into another area.
Right. Yeah.
You're jumping around the teachers, and this what we're talking about is what I'm talking about is the educational system.
I know. But you have
not
to,
teachers.
I'm just saying, you have to keep in mind the Me Too nature of this. If the CUPE support staff get 11.7%, you don't think ETFO and the OSSTF and all the rest of them are going to say you gave CUPE 11.7%? I want my 11.7% too. The news is coming up. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Just more of a push for Indigenous languages being heard, seen, whether it's in the media or just on signs on the road. Culture and language is such an important piece to reconciliation, and I feel like that's the goal that I want to see. So just more Indigenous languages being lifted and promoted and encouraged and spoken and just heard.
Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m., it's the RTV quiz. Giovanni Petiti hosts a weekly trivia competition that lets you play from the comfort of your couch. Play along at home and challenge your friends. And don't forget to follow along on social media. Let us know who's top of trivia, and you can find yourself featured on a future episode.
Are you kidding me, folks?
The RTV quiz, Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Rogers TV or at rogerstv.com/RTV quiz.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it is 9 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. There's just under 3 weeks left before there's a new mayor, a new council, and new school board trustees. About 19,000 voters have already cast their ballots in the special advance polls, with 2 more opportunities to cast your ballot early coming this Friday and next. Now, voting day across the province is on October 24th. And a new strain of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 is emerging as one of the most likely to dominate this fall and winter. Health experts are concerned that the BQ.1.1 may become the dominant strain before the end of next month. Public Health Agency of Canada tells City News that there have been 12 detections so far in the country. Another gas price hike is expected at midnight tonight. Prices in Ontario projected to jump at 10 cents from $1.52.9 to just shy of $1.63. The latest increase is one of the 3 highest single-day jumps the province has seen in the last decade. City News time is 10:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Associated Press just reporting now, Loretta Lynn, legendary Loretta Lynn, country music superstar, has passed away. 90 years old. 10:33, Rob Snow Show. And we're talking, this is a talkback hour, of course, minimum wages and 11.7% raises. 2 stories that are in the news. The Ontario minimum wage, $15.50 an hour now. Ontario Federation of Labor says it's Still not enough. It should be $20 an hour. What do you think? QP education workers, this is also in the news. 96% vote in favor of a strike. Doesn't mean they're going on strike. 11.7% wage increase is the ask from the union. 11.7% a year. A year. Okay, if they end up going on strike because that's the raise they want, and the government will not give in to that demand, would those workers have your support? Okay, it would be a raise according to the union of $3.25 an hour. That's what works out to 11.7% a year, $3.25 an hour. And even with inflation running as hot as it is, the inflation rate is 7%. The union wants 11.7%. Now, on the other side, you have the Ford government. And the offer from the government is well below the rate of inflation. The government is saying if someone is doing one of these jobs and is making less than $40,000 a year, we are offering 2% per year over 4 years. If someone is making more than $40,000 a year, the government's offer is 1.25% a year. The union says that would be raises of between 33 cents an hour and 53 cents an hour. The union wants $3.25 an hour, right? So one would assume they're going to have to find some middle ground, and a common number brought up by some of the callers so far seems to be 8%. Odin, you're on City News.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, sir. Thanks for calling.
Listening to everything there. I mean, 11.7%, well, that's over 4 years, right?
No, a year. A year.
No, I know that, but that's additionally a year over 4 years?
11.7% a year. I believe it's 3 years they want it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, I was thinking it was 4 years, but I mean, even at 4 years, that's 46.8% over the entire contract at that point. But 3 years is slightly less. I don't know. I've worked for a fair number of people. I don't get raises very often, unfortunately.
Right.
And it's like, I can't imagine getting like 30 to 40% over just a few years of an increase. It doesn't really make sense to me. What happens when the next contract comes up? You know, I mean, I would be thinking at the very least, you know, the cost of living. If the cost of living right now is
7%,
7%, I think that would be more than fair.
Okay.
As an annual basis, or do it on a cost of living basis, basically, if the cost of living goes down. You give them less, but if it goes up or keeps the same, you know, I mean, at the annual cost of living, by the time that their contracts are due or by when their contract would be set for a raise,
right?
Would that be a fair raise?
Well, maybe, what about something like this? Okay, the inflation rate right now is 7%. We'll give you 7% the first year, and then we'll tie it to whatever the inflation rate is for the lifetime of this contract, 4 years.
Exactly.
And then by the fourth year, maybe inflation is back down to, say, 3%. Fingers crossed, or something like that. Could you stomach something like that?
Oh, in my job right now, I'd be happy with that.
Right, okay, yeah. If they went on strike and said, you know, we reject the government's offer, we're sticking with 11.7%, we're going on strike, would they have your support?
No,
you don't think so? Okay. All right. What do you think about $15.50 an hour as a minimum wage?
I think it's not bad. I mean,
not bad.
It's low, but, you know, I'd be thinking 16 if I was going to go any higher, not that much more. I mean, as minimum wage, I mean, it's not meant to be average wage.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Odin. Gotcha.
Thank you
okay.
very much.
Not much higher than 16, he says. $15.50 an hour, the new minimum wage now in Ontario. It's been quite a battle just to get it to that point. Now some people are saying it's not enough and it should be 20. It wasn't that long ago. It was $11.40 an hour, I remember. Like 2016, 2017, it was about $11.40 an hour. David is nodding his head as though in 2016 he was earning $11.40 an hour. I know what that's like, my friend, only it wasn't $11.40 an hour for years in the mid-90s. I was making $6.85 for what seemed like years, because that was the minimum wage in Ontario. So, yeah, it wasn't anyway. It was like 5-6 years ago, it wasn't even $12 an hour. Now it's $15.50 an hour. And some say it's not high enough. It should be 20. So I'd love to know what you say to that in this environment, in this day and age. Not to sound like some kind of old timer, but when I started working at 15, I was making $3.85 an hour. I remember when, right? But I also lived with my parents, who bought all the groceries, bought all my clothes, did all my laundry, cooked all my meals, and when I turned 16, gave me access to their car. So it was all gravy for me, even if it was only $3.85 an hour. It was just like spending money. Now it's $15.50. If I had making $15.50 in 1988, I would have thought I won the lottery. Seriously. But that's the minimum wage now. Becky in Ottawa. Becky.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine, Becky. Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm actually a QP 2357 member here in Ottawa.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, I'm an early childhood educator.
And you want 11.7% a year.
So here, I've got two comments to make about that, just to start off.
Okay.
The conversation keeps coming back to percentages when what our unions put forward is $3.25 an hour, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, like one of your previous callers talked about, how there's such a disproportionate amount between different communities, different school boards of what somebody's paid and what somebody's not.
Right.
There are some areas that are really have a way better contract and some areas that don't. Doing $3.25 an hour versus a percentage increase allows people to get their solid increase. And it actually doesn't work out to 11.7% for everybody. Because if you do a percentage, somebody who's making more is always going to get more, and somebody who's making less doesn't get the same gain. And part of the problem that we're seeing, and the reason why we need such a large chunk to kind of move ourselves, equalize ourselves back up to cost of living, is because for years we've been lumped into legislation that froze our pay and froze our gains.
Bill 124. You had Bill 124.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but nevertheless, you have the government. Your union, CUPE, says the average wage for permanent employees, this is right from the union, is $27.87 an hour, which your union calls poverty wages. Now go talk to somebody who's collecting ODSP if you want to know what a poverty wage is.
Right, but you have to understand that we're also professionals who are expected to have education. We're part of colleges, and the same way teachers are. We're only 10-month employees. So we make that amount of money over 10 months and then have 2 months where we have to find other work. Considering that we are registered professionals who are showing up for these really tough jobs in our schools, and we're going home with an amount of pay over the year that doesn't allow us to maintain. I don't think it's fair to compare us to people who are on ODSP, and I don't want to denigrate anybody who is, unwell, ill, whatever, sitting at home and needing support.
Well, don't call it poverty wages. Don't call it poverty wages then.
Well, but it is though, right? Like I'm also, somebody who is in one of those lower earning brackets. I make the $39,000, and I do. At the end of the day, I don't have enough purchasing power, even if I saved enough money to be able to go to the bank and purchase a home or purchase a car or anything, because I don't make enough money. I don't make enough money to be able to put, a decent amount aside for my children for school. I've had to use the food banks in the last 2 years several times.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep up with how things are going. It is not. I shouldn't have to do that. If I'm a full-time employee, I'm a full-time professional who is showing up and doing an important, what they're calling frontline work, right? Essential service for the community. Why am I then going home or having to take Fridays off to line up at the food bank?
So what school board are you working for?
I'm working for the Ottawa Catholic School Board. I'm actually on leave right now, complications from a COVID infection. So I was in there front lines in a kindergarten classroom every day.
Right.
30, 32, 3 and 5 year olds.
For the Catholic School Board.
With the Catholic School Board.
Okay.
Hoping really,
So how close were you? How close were you to this? Sorry, Becky. How close were you to this average of almost $28 an hour.
I'm just below it. I'm making about 20. I think my hourly wage technically is in the $27 range.
27.
Mm-hmm.
And your job is to do what then?
I'm an early childhood educator. I teach
Early childhood
full day.
educator. All right.
Mm-hmm. And I work alongside a teacher. This is the piece that I didn't quite get to, is that wage freeze legislation that everybody's had to deal with it, the nurses, the teachers, whatever.
Yeah.
It disproportionately affected our working class because we don't make the kind of money those people do. Over those 10 years of not getting those increases, those people were not pushed below the poverty line. And they're using that language, poverty line, because the government, like the Ford government came out with that, article saying that anybody making under, the 40-something thousand a year are considered low income. Well, we're well under it. And actually most of our union is under that amount. So asking for...
So did you vote to go on strike?
I did. I absolutely did.
And you're willing to go on strike?
And I am willing to go on strike because it's kind of, it's sort of enough. We keep being forced back into work, forced into situations, told that what we need to do is we need to step up, put more of our resources in order to serve the public and to serve the community and to serve, the budget lines. But we're falling apart. Like schools are also just extremely understaffed. It is really difficult to get anybody to come into the school anymore because of the conditions and because at the end of the day, you have to be more committed to the vocation than you are to your life.
All right, Becky. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Be right back with Garth's call. Joe's in Kempville. Vince is in Nepean. Get to all your calls. There's one line available there. Rob Snow Show, City News.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
I'm Mallory, and I was walking home one night when an impaired driver hit me. He had been overserved in 2 bars before getting behind the wheel. If the servers would have called him a cab instead of serving him more alcohol, my life would be the same as what it used to be. I think servers play the biggest role in keeping us safe because it's up to them what state the person's in when they leave. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law.
$20. Hi, I'm Maggie. Come into my kitchen. When you're using salt in a recipe, check for saltiness. Not all salts are equal. A fine grain salt is a lot more salty than a large grain salt because that takes longer to get into the food. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. Down the...
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
10 minutes ago, Talk Back Hour. Minimum wages and raises today. Garth in Nepean. Morning, Garth.
Good morning, Rob.
So it's good to hear from you. You want to start with minimum wages or raises?
Raises.
Raises. 11.7% a year is the ask from the union representing the education workers, represented by CUPE. These are the support staff. 11.7% a year. If they go on strike, would they have your support? You heard the previous caller.
That's exactly, I would support them, and the last caller was a prime example of why we should support them. They are working in difficult situations. And again, this woman was saying she has children in school, and she's trying to make it a better situation for not only her own children, but all children who are in the school system. And so, yes, bless her. So she should receive higher employment wages.
Okay. All right. What about the minimum wage at $15.50 an hour? Is that enough?
No, the recommended fair minimum wage or living wage is $18.70 an hour.
$18.70 an hour,
and that's even that I think is just scraping by. If you're it's the employers and businesses are looking for
make a distinction
employees
between
now. There's such a large job.
Labor shortage.
Labor
right?
shortage.
Yeah, right.
And so, if they want to increase employment, they should increase the. You shouldn't have to be the working poor to subsist, to work to subsist.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I could go on a little rant. I won't. Joe in Kempville. Joe.
Yes. How are you, Rob?
I'm good, Joe. I'm good. Why don't we start with I hear you for just fine, Joe. 11.7% a year for CUPE education workers. If they went on strike with that kind of increase demand, would they have your support?
Yeah, they would have my support, to be honest.
They would?
Okay. Yeah, it all depends on the way you look at it, right? If you're the union, you don't like that 11.7% because that's what's ugly, right? Who gets 11.7% per year as a raise? So on the surface, it seems like, it is unjust and they're asking for too much. But if you take over, the years of them not getting the increases that they should have gotten in comparison with the work that they are doing, I think you would find that 11.7% is fair.
Okay, because of Bill 124 and their wages, wage increases being capped at 1%, you mean?
Yeah, correct. It's all the whatever narrative you want to determine, right? If you want to call it whatever, $3-4 an hour, what's 11.7? If you tell me 11.7%, I'll say that's insane. However, you tell me $3 an hour, that seems more than reasonable to me.
You have to, but we have to compare things to, what is the increase in the cost of living, which we measure in percentage terms, and to come up with the increased cost of living, we use the Consumer Price Index, which measures, obscure things like the price of butter, for crying out loud. The price of butter maybe it's only gone up $1, but it's still gone up, whatever it's gone up.
I get that. And another thing too, if I can just put in perspective, childhood educators. And I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have a wife. I don't have a relative. I don't work for the school board.
Okay.
But I have 3 children, and when they were, in kindergarten, and I would ask them, "Who is your teacher?" They would tell me it was the early childhood educator. And then I would even ask, okay, so how about Mrs. So-and-so? Who is she to you? I don't really know. But what does she do? She's just there. And I've seen this firsthand when coming in to help, when you have guest speakers coming into the school, who's around? It's those early childhood educators. They're the ones that take care of your children, make sure their shoes are on, make sure that they get their coats on to go outside and whatnot, And,
all right. You think they're doing the heavy lifting?
I'm not saying the teachers don't do anything, but they're in the periphery.
All right.
So,
Okay.
I mean, it's only fair that they do get what they deserve, is all I'm getting at.
All right. Very interesting, Joe. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. A lot of wind noise there. Going to move along. Vince in Nepean. Vince.
Oh, hello, Rob.
Hi, Vince.
Well, I'm taking a more philosophical approach to this. The education workers have an advocate. It's called a union.
Yeah.
They pay union dues.
Yep.
The union is an advocate for them.
Yep.
Wherever they can get, more power to them. That's what I say.
Okay.
And on the other hand, you have minimum wage workers. There's no advocates for them. The general public has an opinion of what they should make, and it's a little presumptuous on our part to say you should make that much, you shouldn't make that much. They don't have any advocates. So who speaks for the people who don't have a union or an advocate? Nobody.
Well,
so
they have to speak for themselves. Yeah, have to speak for themselves, I guess.
Yeah, well, you go try to speak to the employers you want to raise.
It's all I've ever done. I've never been in a union.
No, but you never made union wages either. So that's the whole point.
Right.
If you don't have an advocate, don't expect a lot of salary, a higher salary, because you're not going to get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
so it's a simple thing. So people who I know, for example, I'll have an example for you.
Okay.
I know a gentleman who worked for 40 years for this. I'll say it. A drug company. Okay, drugstore.
A drugstore. Okay.
He ended up being a manager. Okay.
Yeah.
For the last 5 years, he was a manager. The drugstore changed ownership 2 or 3 times within the last 5 years, okay? The last owner came in, walked in up to the manager and said, after they were in ownership for about 2 months or so, walked up to this manager and said, after 40 years working there, he said, you have half an hour to get out. We're streamlining and we're organizing.
Mm-hmm.
You're out of a job. No union, 40 years, making $22 an hour.
Right.
Okay, so that man didn't have an advocate. He's out the door after. I mean, is this right? No.
Well, we can argue about whether it's right or wrong. I hate to see anyone lose their job. I've also, in my working career, seen lots of union members marched out the door too, Vince.
Of course, right? Yes, but they had advocates. They had fair wages.
Had advocates.
They had
Sure. Let me ask you. The inflation rate is 7%. Okay?
Yes.
This union is demanding 11.7%. If these workers go on strike, my question is, will you support them or not?
Yes, I will.
You will. Okay. I got you. That's all I want to know. That's all I want to know right now. Okay, Chris in Canada. Chris.
Hey, I don't support what they're looking for.
Okay. Why not?
Just
too much?
Well, the caller you had saying making just under $27 an hour, even though it's over 10 months.
Yeah.
Maybe they should look at some of the off-paycheck perks before they start discussing salary, like the pension and 100 sick days. I think Stephen Lecce said. Who needs 100 sick days a year?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, they don't have like a short-term disability program, right? Traditional short-term disability program. So.
But all I ever see it is holding the kids hostage at the same time saying that it's all about the kids.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Chris, thank you. Thanks. Chris does not support that if they go on strike. This will be the last call of the hour. It's Ryan in Constance Bay. Ryan.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Don't really support it because if you look at it, the money's got to come from somewhere. It's not a business. So they can't just raise the price. So they got to raise taxes on all of us to pay for it.
Okay. So if they went on strike.
It really makes sense. They get their raise, but then it all gets taken back in tax, like minimum wage when it got raised. Everything, all the price of everything went up.
Yeah.
So now the wage you just got is gone.
All right.
It just made it more expensive for everybody else.
Okay. All right. So they wouldn't have your support if they went on strike with that kind of wage.
They only work. They only work half the year for that wage.
Well, 10 months of the year is what the caller said. The summer's off, right? Summer's off. So
that's pretty mint.
Well, they don't get paid in the summer either.
Do they get unemployment though in the summer?
They can apply for EI, sure. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
Or you can get another part-time job in the summer.
I suppose so, yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, Ryan, thank you. Yep. That's it. Talkback hour and a red hot one. Rob Snow Show, City News.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
I'm Mallory, and I was walking home one night when an impaired driver hit me. He had been overserved in 2 bars before getting behind the wheel. If the servers would have called him a cab instead of serving him more alcohol, my life would be the same as what it used to be. I think servers play the biggest role in keeping us safe because it's up to them what state the person's in when they leave. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, October 4th. Good morning. I am Damilola Onime. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, partly cloudy, 9 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It's a role in elected office, but it's not necessarily a glamorous one. As City News reporter Chris Curris looks at what goes into the role of city councillor and what you should be looking for in candidates when making your decision on election day.
Do they have relevant work, educational, or community experience? And are they doing it for the right reasons?
Why are you running for office? Do you want to do something or do you want to be something? And there's so many of them, I want to be something. I've heard so many people say, I want to be in politics. I want to be in politics. This is public service.
Former councillor Maria McRae says it's also about being a good team player.
If you're dealing with a rural issue and you're an urban councillor, can you work together with those rural colleagues? Because you want them to help you with city projects. If you can't play in the sandbox well with others, get nothing done.
A bonus, she says, is getting the chance to meet them at the door, proving the importance of canvassing. Chris Curry's City News.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced a $300 million Hurricane Fiona Recovery Fund to help people on the East Coast impacted by the storm.
This funding will support projects to repair and rebuild storm-damaged critical infrastructure such as wharves, support the cleanup of fishing gear so that boats and marine life can once again safely navigate these waters, of course help local businesses and communities rebuild and recover.
In Halifax, Justin Trudeau says this money will provide assistance for costs that are not covered by existing federal programs. It builds on other federal efforts to assist provinces after the storm, such as deploying the military, providing disaster assistance, and matching donations from the Red Cross. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, it's another cool one for us. You'll need the extra layers, but plenty of sunshine today. You may have some frost, may even have some fog or freezing fog in spots, but that will all dissipate. 19 for the high today, so it will get warmer tonight, mainly clear, down to 5. For today, the high, 19.
City News time is 11:02. The current mayor is auctioning off some office items before he leaves the job. Among the items up for auction are dozens of jerseys, watches, paintings, and much more. Jim Watson says the proceeds of tonight's event will go towards the Ottawa Food Bank.
But at the end of the day, I think, there's certain things you need to survive. Food is one of them.
And that's why, I've tried to help the food bank over the years with different events, and this is just one more opportunity.
The auction is free to attend, and there'll be coffee and timbits. It is taking place at City Hall between 5 and 7 p.m. Hockey Canada will be in the hot seat today after much criticism from federal politicians over reports the organization has an undisclosed second fund to handle some sexual assault claims. A House of Commons committee is holding another round of hearings today. City News parliamentary reporter Cormac McSweeney has more.
MPs are angry and disappointed to learn of this second fund, and at Heritage Committee, they'll have a chance to question the current and past chairs of Hockey Canada about this. The Globe and Mail reports the second fund is a cash reserve that can also be used to handle potential sexual assault claims, although the organization did not reveal this in its multiple previous appearances before the committee. The NDP's Peter Julian believes that Hockey Canada tried to conceal this and can no longer be trusted. He's calling on the feds to launch a full financial audit.
So that all Canadian parents can know what Hockey Canada has been doing with their registration funds that they scrimp and save to finance, to make sure that their daughter and son can be in Hockey Canada programs.
The Minister for Sport is renewing calls for resignations and new leadership in the organization. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
I am Damilola Onima, and for News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
He's my friend on the right side of things, syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Prime Minister Harper. Michael Taube is back with me on the Rob Snow Show here on City News. Good to hear from you, my friend.
Hey, how are you doing, Rob?
I'm good. Well, actually, I'm just reading Blacklock's Reporter. I'm a subscriber to Blacklock's Reporter, and the managing editor there, Tom Korski's with us every Friday. And my gosh, they've got a heck of a scoop this morning. Minister backdates document. It's headlined. And Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino backdated government documents in an apparent bid to mislead a federal judge, records show. Mendicino did not comment. Access to information files in the case date from 2020 when Mendicino was Minister of Immigration.
Right.
So this was all about something called the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants Act. But they couldn't use this name, the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, because that's already trademarked by a private Vancouver company.
Okay.
So all of this was before a judge. And a little further down, it says the Privy Council office, on the same day as the November 20th trademark hearing, published a garbled order in council on its website implying the act was enforced. It wasn't. The notice included a date-modified entry of April 31st, 2017. There are not 31 days in April.
That's true. I was born in April, so I know that.
Wow. Wow.
God, what a mess. You know, but it's interesting that you pointed out. I mean, Blacklock's Reporter is an excellent service. Tom Korski, who you have on, and I know his wife Holly Doan quite well, and they do an excellent job overall. And I mean, unfortunately, there are a lot of people, including those in the government, who don't necessarily like what they report.
No.
But that's a good thing. It means that their service is actually providing something important. And no, whenever you backdate something, if you backdate something in business, you can be held up for, and you know this with a business background, Rob, you can be held up as a crime. It's a criminal act to backdate things specifically. Sure. Do people do it in small ways, in different ways, under the radar? Yes, but it doesn't make it right. And especially when you do it in government, it's even worse. And
well, the allegation is,
what a mess.
The allegation is, this was to kind of like pull the wool over the eyes of a judge. I mean, my goodness gracious. So, and this is not the first time this minister's been in hot water. This was the minister who was saying we declared the Emergencies Act because all the police chiefs were telling us that was the tool that they needed. And then one by one, all the chiefs of police came before committee hearings on the Hill and said, well, it wasn't us. We didn't ask for the emergencies.
I know. I wrote about it too. I know.
that?
I saw that as well. But look, it's very simple to tidy this up. If this report is true, if what Blacklock has revealed is true, Mendocino shouldn't just be in theory in hot water. He must be placed in hot water because this is really bad.
Wow. Okay, so as the world turns, Legault wins again in Quebec.
Yep.
No surprise, telegraphed by all the polls. A real stranglehold he has over Quebec politics and maybe more specifically Quebecois politics. But all the chatter afterwards is about the fairness or unfairness of first past the post. For example, Duhaime's Conservative Party gathered a very respectable, for Conservatives in Quebec, 13% of the vote, but won no seats. Whereas the Liberal Party won 14% of the vote, won 21 seats, and will form the official opposition. So first past the post. People are complaining about this again, needs another look. I'm wondering what you think. What do you think?
Yep, I'm in agreement, and I've written about it for many, many years. I'm a very big advocate of proportional representation or electoral reform. The model, I'm not going to get into all the technical ones. We don't have an enormous amount of time, but there are various things we can consider, including the alternative vote, STV. There's a lot of different formulas you can use from countries such as France, Italy, parts of Germany. You can look at historical models. You can look at current models. Israel has a model. There's a lot. There are many countries around the world that use PR for their voting system. And yes, it's more convoluted to a country like Canada that is primarily only used to dealing with FPTP, or first past the post, which means that if you win a seat by one vote or, say, 1 million votes, that's the seat that you win, and that adds to your party's tally. The problem with it always has been, as we know, and look, I'm a conservative, so I am a supporter of a major party in this country. The FPTP, or first past the post, benefits the major parties, that being the Conservatives and the Liberals, which is why traditionally, although we heard Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for a year or two mutter around that he was considering electoral reform. That was part of his platform when he was elected in 2015. And we can see how far that got, because that discussion has gone by the wayside. The major parties, generally speaking, realize that the system works to their benefit, or that being the electoral system. So why would they want to change it? Because if you just did it based on percentages, if you look at percentage of the vote, very few, if we just use federal politics, very few prime ministers have ever achieved 50% plus one of the popular vote. John Diefenbaker did it once. Brian Mulroney did it once. And there were a couple of liberals in the past, including Wilfrid Laurier, who did it about close to a century ago. And that's it, Rob. That's all there's been. Wow. And for that reason, a lot of a lot of liberals and a lot of conservatives realize that if the system is working to their benefit, why would they tamper with it? It's wrong, but in the same sense, if you looked at the division for the Quebec election, François Legault, who won or will win at least 89 or 90 seats, there's one seat that may go through a recount, he won over 40% of the popular vote, which is very good, but obviously it's not half. All the other parties won in sort of the mid-teens. And interestingly, the Liberals that you brought up, the Quebec Liberals, will form the official opposition. But in terms of the popular vote, Rob, they finished fourth.
Oh, fourth now.
And
okay.
barely ahead of the Conservatives, as you mentioned, who won 0 seats to the Quebec Liberals winning 21 seats. So, you can understand why people get irritated with the voting system, because, like it or not, even though it obviously works to the benefit of those who support major parties, it's unfair overall and is not representative of what the electorate actually believes or wants to see in a particular legislature. But that's the system we have.
Okay. Look, there are so many things I could criticize Prime Minister Trudeau about and have, and it's a long list.
Me too.
Whether it's budgets will balance themselves, massive deficits, all the scandals, People Kind, Agacon, We Charity, SNC, arrogance, virtue signaling, the division. I mean, we could go on. We could go on.
We have.
Yes, we have. I really don't care that he went bungee jumping to celebrate his son's birthday. Okay?
Yeah.
It's important, actually, that people in positions of power and stressful positions, I can imagine, like a prime minister, whoever the prime minister is, it's important they spend time with their family and do real people things.
Sure.
That's my opinion. I want to know, because people are creating quite a fuss about this, so.
Yeah. My position is similar to yours. I don't have a big issue about it. I think the problem was that the photo came up just around the time of the wonderful holiday that he skipped in the first year, the Truth and Commission.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that was, I think, part of the problem. The timing of it was lousy. And no one is saying that he was into pheno surfing this year. He was not. But at the same time, when you see pictures like that, it makes you wonder, and it makes Canadians who don't like Justin Trudeau, it makes them wonder whether or not this prime minister, A, really cares about truth and reconciliation, B, whether he cares about this one celebration that he fought so hard for and is champion for so long, to the point now that based on what happened last year, many Native groups and Native leaders do not trust the man whatsoever. And thirdly, the timing is just horrible. Just if you want to go bungee jumping with your family, I'm perfectly okay with that. You've already said you're perfectly okay with that. I'm sure most of your listeners are perfectly okay with that. But time it such as it doesn't conflict with anything, a major holiday, an important celebration, a memorial, whatever it may be, just do it on an off week where no one is going to say anything other than, well, there's the Prime Minister off again doing whatever he's doing.
Fun and games.
At least then he could say, well, I went bungee jumping with my family, or whatever the activity is, and at least some of his critics will leave it alone. The timing for me, I think, was the big issue here.
I will say this. It was an interesting contrast. You have Trudeau doing the bungee jumping thing while Pierre Poilievre addresses this massive crowd in, where was that? Richmond Hill, I think it was,
Richmond
right?
Hill,
50,000 people at
the Free Iran.
at the Free Iran thing. Yeah, that was incredible. Big protest. Wow. Holy smokes. Yeah.
It was huge, but it was incorrectly reported. Did you see this? I don't know if you actually mentioned
I didn't see it. No.
Some of the early reports actually said there were several hundred people out, and some of the people who were attending it took pictures, and it was clearly way more than that. Now, I'm not saying that there was a whole conspiracy, but it showed that a lot of people and a lot of media organizations evidently didn't send anybody out there when they really should have, because it was a massive gathering, an important gathering as well. And Pierre Poilievre and Melissa Lantsman and several other conservatives did the right thing by showing up. Again, that's where the government should have at least sent one senior minister, even if that person...
They were invited. They were invited. By the organizers invited them. They never heard back from anybody.
Exactly, and that's the problem. So again, it goes back to what we're talking about in a different way, apples and oranges with the bungee jumping. Anything that's important, the Liberals seem to either ignore, pass, skip, or just turn a blind eye to. But when it comes to frilly things, well, they're all there. And that's something that the voters should think about the next time we hold a federal election in this country.
Let's talk about what will happen this week, could happen this week in Alberta, where it's down to the final hours before the results of the UCP leadership are announced. Now, according to the Calgary Herald, Danielle Smith is already sounding like she's the winner and is going to become the next premier of Alberta. Whether that's premature, who knows? What do you think? How could this turn out? What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, look, Danielle has been a friend. I've known her for a long time. And I would even agree, and if it comes back to her, she'll know why I'm saying it. It is always premature to celebrate your victory before all the votes have been tallied. The best thing to do is talk like you're a front runner, what you will do as a front runner, not that I've already won this thing, here are my next steps. Go to the point of, and then when you win, you can then start to introduce some of the things that the Calgary Herald discussed and that other papers will undoubtedly discuss as well. Putting that aside, I think that It's critical for her to at least ensure that people understand what her ideas are, what her political agenda is going to be, what her future thoughts on certain issues are going to be, especially because, based on most polling, it appears as if she'll win, but, not by a huge margin, but by a comfortable margin over Brian Jean, who will likely finish second. And for that reason, anything that worries Alberta voters about the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which you and I have talked about, and various other things, she can either couch some of the language or explain it in further detail that alleviates some of the concerns in people's minds about what is potentially going to happen and what she plans to do. So that's one part of it. The other part of it as well, and I'm pretty sure we discussed this last week, is this is basically going to be the end of Jason Kenney's career. He will no longer be the Alberta Premier fairly shortly. Yeah. And it's kind of an astonishing drop when you think about how successful he's been since the 1990s. This is how far back we go, 30 plus years, that it all comes to an end in a way that I don't think most people would have believed, but largely caused by COVID-19, which has actually ended quite a few political careers, not just in Canada, but around the world, too.
To me, it's astonishing that Jason Kenney is not running for re-election in Alberta. When I think of he had a long career with many major cabinet portfolios here in Ottawa. Seemed for a while to be a natural kind of heir apparent to Stephen Harper, just totally ideologically aligned. But nevertheless, a lot of people left in the run-up to the Trudeau Rising. John Baird left, for example, here in the Ottawa area. That's right. But, he went out to Alberta. He took two parties and basically blew them up. In order to bring this new party together. UCP ran for the leadership, won, ran in the general election and won, and then a year later COVID hits and it's his undoing. So unbelievable turn of events. But
it is unbelievable, but in fairness, he obviously has to share in some of the blame.
Oh, yeah.
It was his policies when he jumped the gun and dropped all the restrictions way too early. Yeah. He made a lot of tactical errors, and for that reason, that's why he's on his way out.
Yeah. The Sky Palace thing, too, Mike, there was the hypocrisy that
You're right. That definitely did not help. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about a little bit of U.S. politics here. I don't know how closely people are following this, but there are some Senate races that are worth watching, if only because of the personalities that are involved. And they're Trump. I call them Trump's handpicked losers, like Dr. Oz. The Republican Senate candidate in Pennsylvania who, quote, inflicted suffering on and killed over 300 dogs, 31 pigs, 661 rabbits, and rodents during his time as a principal investigator at Columbia University lab. So he's like a Trump guy. Then you have the Daily Beast reporting on this Senate race in Georgia. Herschel Walker is the Republican candidate there, a legendary football player. Who is on the record as saying he wants a total ban on abortion, no exceptions.
Yes.
Like none for rape, incest, not even if it threatens the life of the mother.
The mother's life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quote, Daily Beast, a woman who asked not to be identified out of privacy concerns told the Daily Beast that she and Walker conceived a child where they were dating back in 2009. He urged her to get an abortion. The woman said she had the procedure and that Walker reimbursed her for it. She supported these claims with a $575 receipt from the clinic and a get well card. Wow. What does this say about, first of all, Trumpism, given how bad some of these candidates seem to be?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, whenever someone endorses someone else, you walk with that person. You walk in their footsteps. So if the individual runs a great campaign and everything goes smoothly, well, you look like a great hero. If the person stumbles and fumbles or gets stuck in these various controversies, some of which you mentioned here, it makes the person who tapped them for that particular position look foolish, if nothing else. I think, unfortunately, for Trumpism, you have certainly elements of people that Donald Trump has supported. And he has supported some people who were quite normal and went on and have won posts and have not caused any issues. But then you have these sorts of episodes with Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker. I'm less bothered, to be perfectly honest, with Herschel Walker's position, only simply because the abortion issue is handled very differently in the United States than it is in Canada. And what that sort of language and issues and controversy would never sell here. It would basically end a political career. But where the pro-life movement is much stronger in the United States, and as I've admitted publicly many times over the years, I do lean pro-life, but not as strongly as many of my American counterparts, and certainly not to the extent that Mr. Walker is discussing. I don't think that will necessarily hurt him as much. What may hurt Herschel Walker has been allegations of extramarital affairs, which there have been several. Most of them have been unproven, but unfortunately the dark cloud just follows you, and it makes it very difficult to get away from it. With Dr. Oz, you're right. The issues that are being discussed with the Columbia University lab is not going to sell in a northeastern state like Pennsylvania. Plus, as well, Oz has run a very unconventional campaign. From what all I can tell, and I don't know the man, he seems pretty unconventional as a person, as a former TV host, etc. So unfortunately, he's getting clobbered in that race, although ironically, the Democrat who's running against him, McClellan, I believe, is as unusual as he is on the other side of the fence, and would have been easy pickings if Pennsylvania Republicans had picked someone better to run against them. But unfortunately, Trump's word obviously does hold in a lot of states, and that is a mistake. So for Trumpism, yes, will it be associated with Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker? Win or lose? Absolutely. And if they both lose, especially a winnable state like Georgia, which is where Mr. Walker is running, and he was, as you pointed out, a great football star for the University of Georgia, it would be a disaster. Losing Pennsylvania used to be a Republican state in the days of Ronald Reagan, even in George H.W. Bush as well. Less so today as time has gone along. There's been a lot of changes and different people having moved into Pennsylvania who aren't necessarily traditional Republicans or moderate Republicans, which used to be what Pennsylvania was known for. It's a little less surprising that Oz is collapsing, but Trumpism in both cases, yeah, it'll be associated with both Oz and Walker, whether they win or lose. And that's something that as time goes along and we're getting closer to the to the nomination process for the GOP nomination for the presidential race in 2024, these are things that aren't going to necessarily sink Donald Trump's campaign, but they will make people question Trumpism and, more importantly, Mr. Trump's judgment when he chooses candidates even more.
Yeah, great point there, Michael Taube. Thank you so much for this week, as always.
My pleasure.
Great to hear from you,
Rob.
Yeah. Syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper, Michael Taube. Housing policy, this issue of R1 zoning, single-family homes. Professor Mike Moffat, Senior Director of Policy, Smart Prosperity Institute, will join me right after the news here on City News.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
At St. John Ambulance, we're all about community. We teach life-saving skills and provide community support through our volunteer services. All St. John Ambulance product sales and training registrations support these important services. Volunteer, donate, or enroll in a program today so we can continue to have an impact on our community. Visit sja.ca to learn more. At St. John Ambulance, we do more than save lives, we change lives.
You know the story. When the RCAF said Mach 2 fighter, 2 place 1,000-mile range, the British said it was impossible. The Yanks tried twice and failed. They said, you're dreaming. We said, fine, we'll build it right here in Toronto. And now you guys, my guys, are saying that it can't be done, that they were right?
Now that's the rocket that we use to get the model up to speed, and then the onboard sensor tells them.
Come on, baby.
it!
But we did it according to your specs. The specs have changed.
We did it.
Arrow 201. You're cleared for takeoff.
Although the government cancelled the project and destroyed the prototypes, the Avro Arrow remains for Canada a world benchmark in aerospace achievement.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
I mean, policing in every community is going to be challenged. The community policing model is already a harm reduction response to the way that they police. I just think that we have, again, another opportunity to use police for the things that police should be used for, and then develop some other avenues for things that we can take off a police officer's plate, because it's just not what they should be doing.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
One for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, October 4th. Good morning. I'm Alex Gouge. Right now in Ottawa, 12 degrees under partly cloudy skies and a frost advisory remains in effect. And in Smiths Falls, it's 11. Here's what's making news this hour. With a landslide electoral victory, Premier Francois Legault is going to be choosing his new cabinet role in the days to come. With all polls reporting the CAQ won in 90 of Quebec's 125 ridings, the Liberals hung on to official opposition status, with the party winning in 21 ridings, down from the 27 it had before the campaign. One of the big questions of Legault's new mandate will be what happens if the federal Liberals change leaders or if the Conservatives take power in the next federal election. A new strain of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 is emerging as one of the most likely to dominate this fall and winter. Health experts are concerned that the new variant may become the dominant strain before the end of next month. The Public Health Agency of Canada tells City News that there have been 12 detections so far in this country. Another hike in gas prices is expected at midnight. Prices in Ottawa are projected to jump 10 cents from $1.52.9 to just shy of $1.63. The latest increase is one of the 3 highest single-day jumps the province has seen in the last decade. decade. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Alex Gouge for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Mike Moffat is with me here on the Rob Snow Show on City News. An economist, senior director of policy, Smart Prosperity Institute, which is a think tank that is based out of the University of Ottawa. Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. I believe the last time I talked to you, I thought you were teaching economics at Western, I believe.
Well, I do both. I wear a lot of hats.
Okay, excellent. Look, I'm really glad that you're with us to talk about the housing challenges, because I know it's something that you've been following with great interest. When it comes to, say, housing supply in a big city like Ottawa, a city of, 1 million people, how would you describe the situation with the supply of housing? How many more homes would we need, for example, Mike?
So we did a study at SPI to look at that question. This was a big issue in the last provincial election with the Ford government and the opposition parties saying that we need 1.5 million homes across Ontario over the next 10 years. So we decided to not only audit that number, but see what that meant at a regional level. So we found that 1.5 million number does make sense. It seems to accord with what's going on with population growth and demographic change. And what we found is that Ottawa's share of that would be about 100,000 homes, given how quickly the region is growing. And we've seen at least one mayoral candidate pick up that number and run with it. But that's our best estimate, that Ottawa needs about 100,000 homes to keep up with population growth, but also address the existing housing shortages that we know that exist.
Okay, and how would you say the municipality is doing at forecasting its population growth?
We haven't done a great job. Now we are not alone in that in Ottawa. This has been a problem sort of across the province. We've had a number of changes federally. We have increased immigration targets. We've had sort of international student boom, which our municipalities didn't see coming. Our official plan for the next 10 years targets about 76,000 homes. Its population forecasts are a little bit out of date. They sort of predate these increased immigration targets. So I think we need some reforms here. I think I think the official plan and some of the things that we're hearing from municipal politicians don't really sort of recognize the scale of Ottawa's growth.
Okay, so we may be in Ottawa underestimating population growth over the next several years and underestimating the number of housing units that will be needed to accommodate the population growth. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. We're underestimating both by about 25% or so.
By 25% or so. Wow. Okay. So R1 zoning has all of a sudden become an election issue. We have a mayoral candidate in Catherine McKenney who says we should probably get rid of that R1 zoning because it would allow more infill, more intensification. You have others like Bob Shirelli, for example, who are saying he would defend the single-family home in R1 zoned neighborhoods. When I speak with builders, big and small, they like the idea of getting rid of R1 zoning and building, as you can imagine, 2 or 4 units on a single city lot. When it comes to R1 zoning, this idea, one residence on one building lot, what has your research discovered about how that might help Ottawa's housing affordability problem?
It would certainly help because it would create more options. And I think one of the things we have to recognize is that we're already building not a lot, but we're building some duplexes and triplexes. But if you want to do that now, you need to get special variances, right? You go through a lot of red tape. You're dealing with the municipality. You're trying to sort of lobby politicians to try and get this through. So this is basically streamlining that process. It's basically allowing for things that we already know is happening, but we're taking the red tape out of it, and we're taking a lot of the uncertainty and cost. So I like it for that reason. Is it going to solve all of our problems? Absolutely not. We need to find other ways to build enough housing, but to streamline the process, take out the red tape, I think this would be a fantastic initiative.
Okay. When you say we need to find other ways, what other ideas would come to mind for you, Professor?
Well, I think a few things, and Ottawa's already done some of these. So looking at sort of parking minimums, like if you're building let's say a 6-story apartment building, next to the LRT line. Historically, there's been all these rules about how much parking that you need there, which increases the cost and reduces the number of units you can have there, which doesn't really make sense when you're creating an apartment next to the LRT line. Like the whole point is to give people transit options. So things like that, allowing more density on larger routes would certainly makes sense. Looking at our development charges, right now, if you wanted to build on an existing parking lot, build an apartment building with 20 or 30 units, you're going to pay through the nose on development charges. So on the one hand, we have the city saying, yeah, we want more density, we want more infill. But the second you try and do that, you're coated in red tape and paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars in development charges, despite the fact that the city's not building any more infrastructure. Like the whole point of a development charge is to pay for the extra infrastructure, but yet there's no sort of additional cost to the city. So I think looking at these things, streamlining approvals processes, making sure that development charges are aligned with the actual costs faced by the city, I think would go a long way to solving our housing issues.
Well, I put this to the Minister of Housing, Steve Clark, who's from Eastern Ontario, from the Leeds-Grenville area, from Brockville. And because the trend in Ottawa has been higher development charges, and that is the trend that is firmly in place. Development charges are only going to go up in the city of Ottawa. And that's been the case in the city of Toronto, too, where they just voted to, in some cases, increase development charges by 50% in some cases. The housing minister told me that the thinking is growth pays for growth. This idea that growth pays for growth. What do you think about that, Professor Miller?
Well, I think it should. And okay. I definitely think that, development charges should equal the cost of development. And right now they're not. For the most part, if you're building a single detached home in the suburbs, then, the development charges tend to be fairly reasonable because the city's putting in sewers and roads and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's too low, but they're really sort of reasonable. Where it gets incredibly expensive is building, again, the sort of infill, and not like huge towers, but again, if you wanted to build a 3-story walk-up where a commercial property used to be, you're going to be paying, 7 figures in development charges, despite the fact that the sewers are already there. Right. The roads are already there. Right. The city's not creating all of this extra infrastructure, but they're charging you for it. So what we need to do is basically align those costs and have the cities, and this is not just an Ottawa problem, but have cities actually charge the correct amount for development.
Okay. Just one final question, just because of this kind of time that we're in right now where we have a rising interest rate environment. And, some might call it a normalization of mortgage rates for the first time in a long time. The 5-year fixed is, well in excess of 5% now for a mortgage rate. And we've seen what this has done to home sales, and in some markets, home prices are starting to fall. For those younger buyers who may be looking for an entry point into the housing market, but have been denied such an opportunity so far. Are they to take any kind of joy from what is happening with these retreating prices and these higher interest rates, Professor Moffat? What's your sense of it?
Unfortunately not, because those, any sort of reduction in the sticker prices are being more than made up for the increase in mortgage costs. But what we are seeing, and Statistics Canada confirmed this last week, is more of those young people moving to places like Atlantic Canada and Alberta and so on that have lower housing prices. And now we're seeing the Alberta government advertise on the Toronto subways, try and convince younger people to move to other parts of the country that are cheaper. This is a trend that's been increasing. My concern is that's going to increase more in the future, and that's going to be hard. Our cities are going to have a trouble attracting and retaining the teachers and nurses and skilled trade workers that we need if people are thinking that they can have a better quality of life in Halifax or Edmonton.
Very interesting. Okay. Thank you, Mike Moffat. Great to hear from you, sir. Much appreciated. Yep. Senior Director of Policy, Smart Prosperity Institute. Merritt Stiles is the NDP MPP. The riding is Davenport, and Merritt Stiles is running for the leadership of Ontario's New Democrats. Merritt Stiles will join me next on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
It isn't the heavy trays that make the job difficult, or the fast pace you need to keep up. It's not working another double because someone called in sick. What makes the job tough is the moment you realize a customer has had enough and you have to make that decision not to overserve. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law. We know it's not easy, but we're counting on you to keep us all safe. Thank you, servers, for doing the tough job.
$20. Maggie, Mrs. Calabash, come into my kitchen. A quick mayonnaise, egg yolks, garlic, Dijon mustard, lemon juice, olive oil, immersion blender. Go down, come up. Voila, mayonnaise. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Merritt Stiles is running for the leadership of Ontario's New Democrats. Good morning, Merritt Stiles.
Good morning.
Well, it's great to hear from you.
It's great to be here.
And congratulations, I guess, on making the decision. I haven't had a chance to ask you about it since you made that announcement, so I would like to know why you want to do that.
Well, you know, it's a really important time for our party, for the NDP, of course, with a change in leadership. This is also an opportunity for us as a party, and I think also it's a really important time in Ontario. And I've been, active in my community for like 30 years in various ways and in my party, and I've done lots of different things, and I think it's time to bring that to the service of the party and the province, and present a real alternative to Doug Ford, to the Conservatives, because I think that a lot of people are looking for someone who can inspire them, and for a party that puts forward some good positive ideas to defeat Ford in 2026.
Okay. What I found kind of most stunning about the way the election campaign went was to see so many private sector unions coming out and endorsing the Progressive Conservatives. To see organizers that used to be part of the Working Families Coalition that ran so many attack ads against the Progressive Conservatives in consecutive elections, to be working seemingly on behalf of the Progressive Conservatives. I'm wondering, what does that say about the New Democrats, and have they lost their direction, or some of their core supporters in the labor movement that kind of slipped away from your party?
Well, first of all, I challenge you on that a little bit. I think he trotted out a few unions, but I don't want to understate it, because of course that's something I'm thinking about too, right? The NDP was founded by labor, by progressives working together to build for political power, and it is the job of the NDP leader, I think, to make sure that those voices and the needs of workers are reflected in what we do, right? So it is a concern. I've spent a lot of time, I can tell you, over the last few months, reaching out to workers, reaching out to unions, reaching out to their leadership to hear their thoughts on the campaign and where they think we need to go. And I'll tell you, I think it's pretty clear, and I think you're going to see a big shift too. But most unions and most working people, I think, are still with the NDP, and they do see the NDP as an alternative and an important one. And they know that Doug Ford is not a friend of workers and working people, and that his government is failing those people. And you see that with things like Bill 124, right? But there's no question. It's on my mind. It's something we have to do. We have to make sure we're connecting. And, for me, a big part of that is listening. Right? If we're not listening, we're not learning, we're not going to reflect those values back, and we're not going to be the party that people turn to.
Okay. You were the education critic for quite some time for the New Democrats. I believe Chandra Pasma has that role now, the education critic from the Ottawa area here. So, and were you not a school board trustee at one point?
I was.
Parent style?
I was.
Okay. So I must ask you about what you think of what's going on with CUPE versus the government here. The government is offering raises of between 1.25% and 2%, depending on this $40,000 threshold. CUPE's education workers, the union CUPE is countered with an 11% raise annually, 11.7%. They had a strike vote, 96% voted in favor of a strike. What parents, I'm sure, do not want any more disruption after 2 years of COVID, and the year before COVID wasn't very fun either. So what's the solution here? What's the middle ground here?
Well, look, I do come out of that. I was a school board trustee for 4 years before I became an MPP, and it's by the way, a really important job. Make sure you know who you're electing as your school board trustee. Super important role. But also, what I've been saying all along in this is that Stephen Lecce and the Conservatives are out there. Their approach to negotiations so far has been to kind of throw around a few numbers and then make a lot of threats. And that's not going to help us. they're ramping things up, and I'm really concerned that that is what's going to lead to disruption. So unions, as part of the negotiation process, go through this process of getting the okay from their members that they could pursue work action if they need to, right? It's part of the bargaining process. They got a very strong mandate from their members, and the reason is those workers are the folks in this province who work in education who make about $39,000 and less. So that's your educational assistants, that's your childcare workers, that's your custodians. These people, many of them we know from the research that's been done, are often juggling more than one job. They can't make ends meet on these educational worker job salaries right now. Everybody, all of us, a lot of us are feeling the crunch from the cost of living increases. These workers have not seen significant increases in many, many years. So it makes sense that they're pushing for more, and they're pushing for respect too, and that's also been lacking. So my advice to Stephen Lecce, and I've been saying it, and I know Chandra Pasma, the MPP for Ottawa Nepean, is now calling for that as our education critic, is get back to the table. Get back to the table, stop making threats, and negotiate. There is a number. I don't know what it's going to be, right, but I can tell you that what we're seeing right now is also shortages, not just in healthcare, of healthcare workers, but in education. And if we don't do something quick, we're going to see a crisis. So they need to get their act together at the government level and negotiate a deal so we don't see a disruption in our classrooms, and so we keep people and those workers helping our kids.
Okay. I do want to ask you, we had an Ottawa Carleton District School Board trustee on this morning just to try and get a better sense of what that job entails. And it was very difficult in elections past to get people to even run for trustee. A lot of zones, at least in the Ottawa area, would be acclaimed. There'd be one person, they'd be acclaimed. But now there's a lot of interest in the position of school board trustee. Our trustee said he thinks that has to do with COVID, but there's also some speculation that the culture wars, particularly over issues about gender and sexuality, are really coming to a school near you, and that the trustees, there are some people running for trustee who feel that the school boards have gone too far, and they want a voice around at the school board meetings. Right. What do you think is going on? Because they're very competitive races right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and in some ways, I think that's healthy, right? Because we do want, look, school board trustees, they make they don't make much money, right? It's like a $5,000, maybe $10,000, depending on the size of your board. It kind of depends, but it's really, you get a small amount of money, but it's a very big job, right? There's no question. It's a lot more than what you get paid for. It's very much a part-time thing. That's a full-time job, and so it's really, really important. They get to make some very big and important decisions. I would say too, though, that the provincial government, makes the biggest decisions, and often trustees have to kind of live with that stuff. But the only thing I worry about when I see some of this, and as you said, the kind of quote unquote like culture wars entering the trustee elections, is I really want to make sure those people who are in there representing us and representing our kids and our families on the school boards are not just focused on one issue, right? Like the issues our kids are dealing with right now are huge classrooms, too many students in a classroom. Like I said, education workers, we're having trouble recruiting them those are really important jobs because they're overworked, they're stretched too thin. Our kids need mental health supports. I want to see trustees that are going to fight for those things. And I really worry that this other stuff is a bit of a distraction from the real issues that our kids are facing in classrooms right now. And I think, so if I would say to everybody out there, like when you're talking to your school board trustee candidates, ask them how they feel about public education. Ask them what they understand about how education is funded, because these are the things that they have to make a lot of calls on, and it's and frankly, they don't impact the curriculum. They have no say in the curriculum. So very important that we take these positions very seriously.
Thank you, Merritt Stiles, for joining me today. Great to hear from you. All the best with your campaign.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, bye-bye. Merritt Stiles, MPP Davenport, New Democrat, running for the leadership of that party. Sam LaPrade coming up with the Sam LaPrade Show. I'm actually away tomorrow. I'll be back on Thursday. Derek Fage will be in for me tomorrow. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.